Chapter 75, Surface 75. Placing my foot atop the crowned head of an oversized jellyfish, I retrieved my sword from its defeated form and sent the creature floating into the murky depths below. Their king is down, and most of their forces have met their end, I declared, leaning casually on the hilt of my giant slayer blade. Looks like that's a wrap for this little underwater skirmish, I remarked, pivoting to face Aquaman and the squad of Atlantean royal guards at his side. Indeed, and we owe it all to your light magic for securing such a victory with minimal losses, Aquaman acknowledged with a weary grin. My pure-blooded generals will probably be too embarrassed to even show their faces after doubting you, he added with a rueful chuckle. I shrugged nonchalantly. Can't blame him for doubting a surface dweller in an underwater brawl. We're not exactly renowned for our aquatic warfare skills, I quipped, slipping my sword into the shadows of my storage. But hey, war's over and I've done my part. Time for me to resurface, I announced, casting a glance upwards to the darkened expanse above, hinting at the world beyond the waves. Aquaman arched an eyebrow inquisitively. Heading out already? He questioned. We've got a banquet planned to honor the fallen and celebrate our victory. I'm sure many of my people would be eager to meet you, he added, the invitation hanging in the air. I shot Aquaman a playful grin. So, any stunning Atlantean beauties in the mix? I teased, raising an eyebrow in anticipation. Aquaman chuckled heartily. Oh, I'd say there's quite a few admirers eager to meet our esteemed war hero, he replied with a wide grin. Ladies tend to swoon for a man with a few heroic tales to tell, he added, clapping me firmly on the shoulder. His slap, though well-intentioned, shattered my guardian veil barrier like glass and nearly popped my shoulder out of its socket. Sure, the Atlantean serum had beefed up my physique, but Aquaman still had the upper hand in the strength department. I rolled my eyes, rubbing my sore shoulder. Can't say that I'm not tempted, I muttered wryly. But duty calls, and I've got plenty of unfinished business topside, I explained, waving off the idea of a romantic rendezvous with a chuckle. Aquaman sighed good-naturedly, shaking his head. Stubborn as ever, Micah, he remarked, closing his eyes momentarily. With a subtle gesture, a resounding call echoed through the depths, summoning an oversized dolphin from the shadows. This little guy will escort you back home safely. Take care and drop by whenever you get the chance, Aquaman offered, extending his hand toward me. I grinned, shaking his hand firmly. You know the drill, Arthur. If you ever need a hand, just give me a shout. But remember, my heroics come with a price tag, I quipped, shooting him a wink. Until next time, then, I concluded, releasing his hand and grasping the dolphin's dorsal fin, ready to ride the currents back to the surface. Good old Lady Liberty, I muttered, savoring the taste of fresh surface air as I swam toward the shore. Thanks for the ride, buddy. Feel free to head back now, I added, turning to give the oversized dolphin a grateful pat on its sleek, glistening flank. With a joyful squeal, it dove beneath the waves, disappearing into the vast expanse of the ocean. Turning my gaze back to the land, I propelled myself through the water until my feet finally met the sandy shore. Home, sweet home. I sighed contentedly, relishing the feeling of solid ground beneath my feet. Stretching out lazily, I paused as I noticed the curious stares of a few beachgoers nearby. Glancing down at myself, I quickly realized why I was attracting attention. It was winter, after all, and here I was, standing on the beach in nothing but a pair of pants, dripping with cold ocean water. It must have been quite the sight. But it wasn't just my attire that caught people's eyes. My body had undergone some serious changes during my underwater adventures. The Atlantean serum had not only granted me the ability to breathe underwater and withstand the ocean's crushing pressure, but it also sculpted my muscles into a form that could make bodybuilders green with envy. I wasn't overly bulky, nor was I too lean, just the perfect balance of strength and aesthetics. Furthermore, after spending so much time fighting underwater, I've grown a considerably scruffy beard that, coupled with my long hair, would attract anyone's attention. But that's enough about the changes in my looks. After spending so much time submerged in the depths, navigating the ocean's currents, and straining my muscles under the pressure at the bottom of the sea, my strength and agility had reached new heights. Walking on land felt like a breeze compared to the weight of the water pressing down on me. Oh well, my gains were definitely not small this time around. With a shrug and a smirk, I brushed off the stairs and continued my leisurely stroll along the beach, feeling more at home in my own skin than ever before. Better give Azriel a call, see what's happened while I was away. Strolling through the park in his civilian attire, Azriel couldn't help but halt in his tracks at the bizarre scene unfolding before him. There, seated on a bench ahead, was a pale young man with disheveled hair and a scruffy beard, engaged in what appeared to be a heated argument with an oversized rat perched beside him. "What the hell are you talking about, rat?" The young man snapped, his tone laced with irritation. "Ted's place isn't some random alley trash can, it's even better than my apartment," he continued, jabbing an accusing finger in the rat's direction, eliciting a series of indignant squeaks from the rodent. "In the first place, I haven't been goofing off these past months. I've been fighting a bloody war while you were busy chowing down on cheese in Ted's pad," the young man exclaimed, as if deciphering the rat's squeaks. "So, what if you were bored for a couple of months?" he added defiantly. In response, the rat emitted an angry squeal and lunged at the young man's outstretched finger. "Go ahead and bite all you want, rat. Not even an artillery rocket could scratch me now," the young man boasted, though his bravado was short-lived. As the rat's teeth sank deeper, his face contorted, turning blue, and he began flailing his arms in a panicked frenzy. "Yow, all right, you win. Just let go before you chomp my finger off, you little bastard," the young man exclaimed, causing the rat to finally release its grip, emitting a satisfied chitter. Having seen enough of the peculiar sight, Azriel cleared his throat to grab the young man's attention. "Is that you, Micah?" he called out as he approached the bench. Micah, the young man, turned around, his face lighting up in a grin. "Oh, it's only been a few months, Paul. Don't tell me you've already forgotten this charming mug of mine," he quipped with a chuckle. Azriel shook his head in amusement. "I'm not ungrateful enough to forget a face that saved me from my own demons," he remarked. "Though you've changed quite a bit. If it weren't for your furry friend here, I wouldn't have recognized you," he added, gesturing toward Ratigan. Micah shrugged casually. 2 months of underwater warfare can do that, mate. I reckon it's time for a trim," he mused, scratching his head. "Anyway, how'd things go on your end? Sorted out those issues I left you with?" he asked, raising an eyebrow with genuine interest. Azriel nodded, his expression confirming his success. "Took a bit of elbow grease, but everything's shipshape," he replied. "Livewire's out and about, buzzing with her new talk show. I've made sure she's towing the line as per your instructions, and her star power's skyrocketing faster than a SpaceX launch," he explained with a grin. Micah's smile stretched wider at the news. "You've done well. Now, it's just a matter of keeping an eye on her and finding more avenues for her to flaunt her powers and fame. Keep her on the straight and narrow," he said, nodding in satisfaction. "What about Arnold Wesker and my startup?" Micah leaned back in his chair, a satisfied grin spreading across his face as he listened to Azriel's updates. "So, Albert Wesker's on board, huh?" he mused, nodding in approval. "Well, as long as he's eager to turn his life around, it's a risk worth taking." Azriel raised an eyebrow, a hint of skepticism in his expression. "Offering him a boatload of cash might have been a tad reckless, but hey, it's your call," he remarked, chuckling softly. Micah waved off the concern with a nonchalant shrug. "Time will tell if it pays off," he replied, his tone betraying his confidence. "Now, on to the startup. How's the paperwork coming along?" Azriel's gaze shifted to a nearby stack of documents. "All sorted and ready for your signature," he confirmed. "But remember, getting the manufacturing and sales licenses won't be a walk in the park. You'll need to prove the safety and efficacy of your products." Micah nodded thoughtfully. "Got it. Leave that part to me," he said, rising from his seat. Ratigan, his trusty companion, perched on his shoulder, adding an air of eccentricity to the scene. "I'll take some time off, tie up loose ends, and then we'll kick things into gear," Micah declared with a grin, his mind already racing with plans. "Thanks for all your hard work, Paul. I owe you one." With a wave, Micah bid Azriel farewell and strolled out of the room, a man with a mission and a startup on the horizon. Chapter 76, Handling Business 76. Stepping into Livewire's studio, I was greeted by a crackling bolt of electricity that narrowly missed my head. "Is that any way to welcome your boss?" I quipped, dodging the stray arc with a raised eyebrow. Livewire shot me a defiant glare, her hand crackling with energy. "You're not my boss, Micah," she retorted, her tone tinged with defiance. "If anything, I should be calling the shots around here." I couldn't help but chuckle at her bravado. "Sure, boss lady, if you can offer me the same things I've given you," I teased, listing off her newfound freedom, a studio, and a chance at stardom. With an eye roll, Livewire brushed off my comment. "Fine, whatever," she muttered, clearly unimpressed. "But seriously, where have you been?" she demanded, crossing her arms expectantly. "Here and there, you know how it is," I replied casually, flashing her a grin. "But enough about me. How's my superstar doing? Keeping on the straight and narrow?" I inquired, giving her a pointed look. Livewire rolled her eyes at my comment. "If you consider hacking into social networks to boost my show as staying on the straight and narrow, then sure," she retorted with a casual shrug. "But besides that, everything's running smoothly," she added, a hint of pride in her voice. Chuckling, I leaned back unfazed. "Hey, as long as nobody's getting hurt and you're not getting caught, it's fair game," I remarked, waving off any concerns. "Besides, it's not like we're not investing in promotions anyway. You're just taking matters into your own hands," I pointed out. Livewire nodded in agreement. "Exactly," she confirmed, eyeing me curiously. "But seriously, what's with the new look? You've changed a lot since I last saw you," she observed, taking note of my altered appearance. With a nonchalant shrug, I downplayed it. "Oh, nothing major, just a little underwater skirmish at the bottom of the sea," I replied casually. "But why the sudden interest in my appearance? Starting to fall for me?" I teased, raising an eyebrow playfully. Livewire shot me a mischievous grin and took a step closer. "Maybe I am," she teased back, lightly tracing her finger over my chest. "You're kind of my type now," she said, her tone playful. I chuckled and gently pushed her hand away. "Careful now, that's bordering on sexual harassment. You don't want me calling HR, do you?" I quipped with a smirk. "You're no fun," Livewire said in a pouty tone. "But seriously, did you just want to flirt, or is there something important you want to discuss?" she asked, getting down to business as she sat behind her desk. "Bit of both," I admitted, taking a seat. "Your talk show's been great with you yapping about this and that and all, but we need to think about shaking things up before it gets stale," I suggested, shooting her a meaningful look. Livewire shot me a skeptical look. "Seriously, you think my electrifying presence isn't enough to keep the audience engaged?" she retorted, her tone tinged with disbelief. I maintained my pointed gaze, waiting for her to come around. Eventually, she relented with a sigh. Okay, I'll admit, I'm starting to run out of material. And trash-talking Superman after he vouched for me just feels wrong," she admitted begrudgingly, her tone tinged with resignation. Nodding in understanding, I suggested an alternative. "Ever thought about having guests on the show?" I proposed. Livewire's expression shifted to one of disdain. "Oh, please, I've had requests pouring in from every Tom, Dick, and Harry wanting a spot on the show," she explained. "But it's all just a bunch of suits trying to promote their stuff or the occasional celebrity plugging their latest movie. Nothing remotely interesting," Livewire dismissed with a scoff. "Well, we'll just have to find an intriguing guest to shake things up, won't we?" I countered, a glint of excitement in my eyes. Livewire's expression softened, indicating she was considering the idea. "I already have a couple of people in mind, but it's too early to announce anything," I revealed. "In the meantime, we need to hype up this mystery guest in the upcoming episodes so we can deliver a spectacular reveal when the time comes." I concluded with a grin, eager to see how she'd react. "I'm guessing you won't tell me who to expect even if I ask?" Livewire queried, a frown etching her brow. I responded with a nonchalant shrug. "Acting all mysterious. Seriously, you're not impressing anyone," she remarked, her irritation evident. I grinned at her reaction. "But why the hell not trusting you has brought me this far, so I'll leave it to you. You better not disappoint," she warned, her tone laced with a glare. Chuckling, I assured her, I wouldn't dare. Standing up from my seat, I stretched casually. "I've still got some business to tend to and people to visit, so I'll take my leave," I announced, making my way towards the exit. Livewire didn't bother to see me out. "Don't let the door hit you on your way out," she quipped, a hint of amusement in her voice. As the gates of the Wayne mansion swung open, I was greeted by Alfred Pennyworth, standing at the door with a quizzical expression. "Welcome, young friend. Pray tell, who might you be, and how did you find yourself here?" he inquired, his demeanor tinged with suspicion. I flashed a grin, trying to jog his memory. "I actually gave you a heads-up before arriving. Don't you remember me?" I prompted, arching an eyebrow at his puzzled expression. "We crossed paths some time back in that place down under, remember? I'm the chap with the rat," I continued, gesturing towards Ratigan, who peeked out from behind my shoulder and gave Alfred a friendly wave. Recognition flickered across Alfred's face. "Ah, Mr. Foster," he acknowledged, nodding in realization. "My apologies for the oversight. You've undergone quite the transformation," he remarked, eyeing me with curiosity. "Yeah, well, I've been hearing that a lot lately," I quipped, chuckling at the observation. "Anyway, is Bruce around?" I interjected, steering the conversation. Alfred nodded. "Indeed, he is," he confirmed, stepping aside to usher me in. "Please, do come in. Allow me to escort you to Master Bruce," he offered, gesturing for me to follow him inside. After a brief stroll through the Wayne mansion's labyrinthine halls, I finally arrived at the reception hall. There, I found Bruce Wayne seated comfortably in an elegant chair, surrounded by an array of snacks and steaming beverages on a nearby table. Alfred, the ever-gracious butler, announced his departure with a promise of refreshments. "I'll leave you here to chat with Master Bruce at your leisure." "Excuse me," he said, before vanishing into the mansion's depths without waiting for a response. Bruce acknowledged my presence with a nod. "You're early. Take a seat," he invited, gesturing to an empty chair nearby. I complied, settling into the seat with a smirk. "Shouldn't you be asking who I am and why I'm here?" I teased, raising an eyebrow. Bruce's lips curled into a knowing smile. "Your appearance may have changed, but the way you speak and carry yourself haven't," he remarked coolly. "Besides, Alfred wouldn't allow just anyone to wander in without my consent," he added, waving off any concerns. I let out a sigh, feigning exasperation. "Of course, the world's greatest detective, how could I forget?" I remarked, rolling my eyes in mock disbelief. With a subtle yet unmistakable smirk, Bruce Wayne assumed his persona as he glanced at me, swiftly transitioning from casual conversation to more pressing matters. "So, what brings you to my humble abode? Are you ready to take the reins of our little project?" he inquired, his tone carrying a hint of seriousness. "Not until I have the capital to buy it from you," I replied, shaking my head. "But I did come with a business proposal," I continued, a spark of excitement evident in my voice. Bruce's interest piqued as he raised an eyebrow. "Oh, and what might that be?" he asked, leaning forward slightly in anticipation. With a mischievous grin, I reached into my inner pocket. "A universal cure for cancer," I announced, presenting a small bottle of pills without labels. "I can't hog all the glory to myself, so I thought I'd share," I added with a chuckle, tossing the bottle to Bruce. He caught it effortlessly, inspecting the contents with a thoughtful expression. "Very well," he replied simply, much to my surprise. "Aren't you going to question the efficacy of these pills, or inquire about why I brought them to you?" I asked, eyebrows raised in disbelief. Bruce chuckled lightly, his demeanor unperturbed. "Naturally, my team will conduct tests on these pills. There's no point in questioning their effectiveness when we can simply verify it," he explained, a hint of amusement in his tone. "And I trust that you wouldn't bring a counterfeit product to me. You know how cautious I can be," he added with a shake of his head. Chapter 77. Dealing with smart people is a pain in the ass 77. Flying away from the Wayne mansion, I couldn't help but feel like I'd just been outsmarted by the ultimate smooth operator. Dealing with Bruce Wayne is like trying to outwit a chess grandmaster with a deck of Uno cards. I mean, seriously, the guy sees through my plans faster than I can say universal cure for cancer. When I pitched him the idea of teaming up on the cure, I wasn't feeling particularly charitable. I've got the cure ready to roll, so why share the profits with Gotham's richest playboy? Well, because capitalism and red tape, that's why. As it turns out, you can't just rock up with a miracle drug and expect everyone to jump on board. Nah, there are hoops to jump through, boxes to tick, and all kinds of bureaucratic rigmarole to navigate. So there I am, hoping Bruce's company can cut through the red tape like a hot knife through butter. And wouldn't you know it, he catches on faster than a cat on a laser pointer. Though I might not know the intricacies of navigating the medicine market, Bruce Wayne, with his multi-billion company and its many branches, would be an expert. Furthermore, he had more than a subsidiary specialized in producing medicine with all the know-how that comes with them, making him the ideal partner. So here's the deal. Teaming up with Bruce wasn't just about cutting through the red tape. Sure, I needed him to fast-track the testing phase and all that bureaucratic nonsense, but there was more to it than that. I was counting on the Wayne name to lend some serious street cred to our little cure. People see the Wayne label on a product and they automatically trust it. It's like magic. Once folks start popping our miracle pills and seeing the results, they'll be singing our praises from the rooftops. And hey, that means they'll also trust my company, no strings attached. In the future, I wouldn't have to rely on Bruce and his company. But of course, I wasn't there to ask for a handout without offering anything in return. I offered Bruce a healthy slice of the pie because, hey, the guy deserves it. But let's be real, he probably would have helped out even if there wasn't a penny in it for him. That's just how he rolls. But I've also got my pride, you know. Here's the kicker, though. I've got another reason for cozying up to Bruce. Call it a gut feeling. Heck, call me paranoid even, but I can totally picture some folks getting their panties in a twist over a universal cancer cure. I mean, chemo and all that medical jazz. It's big business, and some people won't be thrilled about losing their cash cow. It sounds like a cheesy movie plot, but in this crazy world, you never know. So here's the scoop. Bruce took my proposal hook, line, and sinker. You'd think I'd be over the moon, right? Wrong. I'm fuming, and here's why. The guy saw through my whole plan like he had X-ray vision or something. And to add insult to injury, he had the nerve to call me out on it with this smug look that screamed, "I've got you, buddy." Now, don't get me wrong, I've always prided myself on being pretty sharp. But compared to Bruce Wayne, I might as well be using crayons. It's a bitter pill to swallow, let me tell you. But hey, I'm not one to back down from a challenge. Sooner or later, I'll have my moment to outsmart that smug son of a gun. Just wait and see. In a clandestine chamber shrouded in shadows, Lex Luthor and Vandal Savage sat across from each other, their eyes locked on the intricate dance of chess pieces. The room was adorned with ancient artifacts, hinting at the wisdom and experience of its occupants. "Why the sudden resurgence, Vandal?" Lex inquired, his voice laced with intrigue as he made his move on the chessboard. Could it be because the UN has put Amanda Waller on trial? Vandal's lips curled into a sly smile, his gaze steady as he considered Lex's query. "Ah, Amanda Waller," he mused, his tone tinged with amusement. "She has indeed been a thorn in my side, but my return is not merely a response to her antics. It's about seizing the opportune moment, the stars aligning perfectly for my grand ambition." With a calculated stroke, Vandal maneuvered his queen into position. "Checkmate in 3, he said, rising gracefully from his seat as he prepared to take his leave, his aura exuding confidence and power. As Vandal made his exit, Lex's sharp intellect went into overdrive. His eyes flickered with a newfound determination as he surveyed the chessboard, analyzing every move and countermove. Moving a pawn, he placed it at the board's epicenter, changing the dynamics of the game. "You've underestimated the complexity of the game too much, old friend," Lex murmured to himself, a smirk playing on his lips. "A single piece has escaped your notice." Lounging comfortably in my room, I flicked on the TV to catch up on the latest news. The familiar face of a news anchor filled the screen, her voice echoing through the room as she delved into the latest headlines. Breaking news today as the trial of Amanda Waller by the UN continues to draw international attention, the news lady announced, her tone grave as she recounted the unfolding drama. Investigations have unearthed shocking details surrounding the destruction of Parador. with reports suggesting that the island's dictatorial leader resorted to detonating nuclear bombs after a covert team sent by the U.S. government backed him into a corner. I leaned in closer, my interest piqued by the unfolding saga. The anchor continued, her words painting a vivid picture of political intrigue and global condemnation. Amidst mounting accusations and finger-pointing, many countries have placed blame squarely on the U.S., condemning their alleged involvement in the Parador incident, she reported, her expression serious as she relayed the gravity of the situation. In response, the U.S. government has taken the unprecedented step of handing over Amanda Waller and Sarge Steele for trial, holding them accountable for their purported roles in the catastrophe. I couldn't help but shake my head at the tangled web of international politics and power struggles playing out on the screen. Sure enough, Eclipso's schemes run deep. Blowing up an entire island and leaving it looking like a nuclear wasteland, talk about overkill. Finding any evidence linking Waller or the U.S. to this mess would be like finding a needle in a haystack, except the haystack is on fire and glowing with radiation. In other words, it should have been impossible to find any evidence implicating Waller or the U.S. government in the nuclear wasteland that was once Parador. Unless someone made sure such evidence could be easily found, that is. Eclipso must have thought he'd hit the jackpot by wiping out Waller and her gang along with Parador. But surprise, surprise, he had to run into me. Though I managed to save the shadow fighters, I've got a feeling Waller's not getting off scot-free. I can't imagine her talking her way out of this one, that's for sure. As for Eclipso, all his plans don't mean shit now. His evil spirits locked up tight in those dusty black diamonds chilling in my shadow storage. I couldn't help but feel bad for all those people in Parador, though. They paid the ultimate price for Eclipso's twisted game. If I ever get the chance, I'll make him suffer. In any case, I'll get around to wiping his sorry existence once I have some free time sooner or later, so it doesn't really matter. Right now, my top priority is beefing up Livewire's show with some killer guests. And who better to spice things up than Poison Ivy? If I can convince her to grace us with her presence, we'll have the whole city talking. Tracking down Ivy won't be a walk in the park, and convincing her will be even more difficult. But hey, nothing worth doing ever is, and it's not like I had anything better to do anyway. With Wesker holding down the fort at the company and Mr. Freeze thawing out his wife after currying her, I've got some time to spare. Speaking of Freeze, did I mention he cracked the code and found a cure for his wife, all thanks to the Father Box? Well, he did, and guess who got full rights to the universal cancer cure he came up with? Me stupid. Chapter 78, On to the Grinder 78. Strolling through the majestic Gotham Park, I couldn't shake off this eerie feeling of déjà vu. Despite never setting foot here before, it felt like I'd clocked in hours wandering its paths. In the distance, I spotted a gloomy young man engaged in what looked like a losing battle with a rugged middle-aged fellow. They seemed locked in combat, but with a blink, they vanished into thin air, leaving me questioning my sanity. Hallucination or ghostly sparring partners? I muttered, scratching my head as Radigan shot me a skeptical glance. Apparently, he missed the show. Maybe I'm just seeing things. Let's not dwell on the weirdness. I'll just have a talk with Poison Ivy and get out of here before seeing things becomes the norm for me, I declared, steering away from the main trail and diving deeper into the park. As I mentioned, I didn't come here for a stroll but to find Poison Ivy. How did I know she was here? Courtesy of the Penguin, Gotham's most reliable information hub. Sure, he's a bit pricey, but when it comes to solid leads, the Penguin's your bird. After several minutes of strolling, I stumbled upon a dilapidated greenhouse, overrun by creeping vines and tangled foliage, as if it had been abandoned for decades. Stepping into the clearing, I unwittingly drew the attention of the shady characters lurking around the area. With their heavy attire, caps, and shades concealing their features, they hardly looked like friendly neighborhood folks. As I pondered their motives, one of them, oozing menace, advanced toward me. "You!" the shady fellow barked, positioning himself at a calculated distance, close enough to intimidate yet far enough to deter any sudden moves. Yep, these guys are definitely not simple. "Who are you, and what the hell are you doing here?" he demanded, his hand inching toward a concealed weapon within his coat. Flashing him my trademark grin, I raised my hands in mock surrender. "Would you believe me if I said I'm just talkin' a scenic stroll?" I quipped, bracing myself for whatever came next. The guy shot me a steely glare, his silence hanging heavy in the air, before suddenly lunging at me with an expandable baton clutched tightly in his grip, clearly aiming for my head. As the man lunged at me with his baton, I caught his wrist with a grin, channeling my inner action hero. With a flick of my wrist and a bit of martial arts finesse, both man and baton were spinning in the air. With one hand, I took the baton and with the other, punched its owner, sending him flying away. He crashed into a tree with a satisfying thud, a symphony of curses from his friends following his descent. "Who's next?" I challenged, brandishing the baton and extending it to its full length like I was about to audition for a superhero movie. The other shady characters exchanged nervous glances, realizing they might have picked the wrong guy to mess with. As they fumbled for their guns and opened fire, I couldn't help but roll my eyes. No hesitation at all. What the hell have I got myself into? I grumbled inwardly, activating my trusty Storm Walker shoes for a speed boost. With bullets flying around me like disgruntled bees, I danced through the chaos, weaving between shots with the grace of a caffeinated ninja. Dodging bullets was becoming a habit, but hey, beats catching them with my teeth. I waited for the first goon to run out of ammo before I decided to pay him a visit up close and personal, zipping over like that one uncle once he finds out your parents aren't home. As I materialized before the man, he swung his pistol at my head, his actions speaking more loudly about his combat experience than any word can. Quick on the draw, I deflected his strike with the baton, making him drop the gun like a hot potato. I was about to give him a friendly tap on the noggin to send him into dreamland, but a glance at his buddy's trigger-happy fingers made me think twice. Let's see how far they're willing to go. Instead of delivering the knockout blow, I looped an arm around his neck and positioned him as a human shield, a move straight out of an action movie playbook. The shady crew didn't hesitate to open fire, clearly intent on turning their erstwhile friend and me into Swiss cheese targets. Well, seems like your pals aren't big on teamwork," I quipped, flashing a grin at my unwilling bodyguard. Summoning a swirling barrier of shadows, I intercepted the hail of bullets before they could turn him into a pincushion. Experienced, ruthless, and packing heat, what a pleasant punch, I mused inwardly, noting their readiness to ventilate their own buddy without a second thought. After giving the guy in my grip a solid headbutt and a one-way ticket to dreamland, I tossed him aside for later interrogation. "Time to clean up and get to the bottom of this mess," I muttered, eyeing the remaining shady characters, who seemed about as shaken as a tree in a gentle breeze. Pouring a generous splash of water on the thug's face, I couldn't help but chuckle as he sputtered back to reality, grumbling all the while. "No, hate school, got no friends, don't wanna go," he mumbled, clearly still in the fog of unconsciousness. A solid slap brought him back to the present, his eyes darting around with cautious suspicion before he clamped down on something hidden in his mouth as soon as our gazes met. With a silent challenge in his gaze, he waited for the shoe to drop, but to his surprise, nothing happened. "Cyanide Bill in the tooth filling, huh? Classic move," I quipped, pulling the poison pellet that was in his mouth with a turn of my hand. The thug's expression shifted from confusion to shock in an instant. "You might as well just end it now. I won't spill anything, even if you put me through the ringer," he spat out defiantly, his jaw set with stubborn resolve. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow at his unwavering defiance. "Not even flinching at death and torture, huh?" I remarked with a wry grin. "After today's botched job, someone else will finish the job if you don't," he retorted, his tone as firm as his grip on reality. "And as for torture, been there, done that. You won't break me," he declared matter-of-factly, bracing himself for the worst. "Fair enough, if you've been trained to endure the training, then regular people certainly can't make you talk." I conceded with a nod, rising to my feet and extending my hand. With a subtle gesture, shadows converged and enveloped the thug's frame, wrapping him in a cocoon of darkness. But who the hell said I was a regular person? As the shadows encased the thug, leaving only his eyes visible, I couldn't resist a mischievous grin. You know, spending the last couple of months at the bottom of the sea taught me some fascinating things, I mused, pacing around him as he squirmed in his shadowy prison. Take the immense pressure down there, for example, and its effect on the human body. I trailed off, watching his confusion deepen. When it comes to toughness, I'm not worse than the strongest Atlantean warriors, but let me tell you, it felt like I had a mountain sitting on my chest for the first week. Got used to it eventually, though, I chuckled, settling down beside him. Now I can't replicate that pressure with my shadows, but a fraction of it. Piece of cake, I continued, shooting him a pointed look. One little squeeze and poof, you're instant paste, I sighed dramatically. But that's no fun. What if I dialed up the pressure bit by bit? I teased, putting on an expression of relishing the thug's fear. Will your bones crack like twigs? Will your insides burst like overripe fruit? Or maybe your eyes will pop out like a cartoon character? I pondered aloud, my grin widening at his growing discomfort. Honestly, I'm just as curious as you are to find out, I chuckled darkly. As the thug's thrashing reached a crescendo, I raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. Oh, seems like you're rearing to go. Your dedication to the cause of science is truly inspiring, I remarked, closing my hand slowly and adding just a hint of pressure. It was less of a squeeze and more like an overenthusiastic bear hug, but the mental image I'd painted in his head with my words seemed to do the trick, sending him into a frenzy of thrashing and muffled cries. Oh, got something to share with the class now? I quipped, flashing him a wicked grin as I peeled away the shadows shrouding his mouth. Chapter 79, Speech 179. Figures, I grumbled under my breath, processing the thug's words with a nod. Well, no surprises there. You can catch up on your beauty sleep now, I added, giving him a light tap on the noggin to send him back to dreamland. It seemed I had picked the wrong time to pay a visit to Poison Ivy. According to Mr. Unwilling Source over here, he and his crew were hired to hunt down Poison Ivy, or so their mysterious employer instructed them. They were nothing more than a ragtag bunch of thugs and mercenaries with no knowledge of each other or their handler beyond the orders they received. Their mysterious benefactor would sporadically pop in, doling out missions and doling out hefty paychecks. Apparently, despite completing several missions, our friend had never once crossed paths with the same crew twice, always finding himself surrounded by fresh faces. The logistics, equipment, and planning were all handled by, well, the elusive handler, of course, leaving them with one simple job: keep quiet and do as they were told. Curious, I probed for details on how they intended to capture Poison Ivy with nothing but guns and blunt instruments. His response? A shrug and a clueless look. As it turns out, the thugs stationed inside the compound were equipped differently and given separate directives for snagging Ivy. Meanwhile, the crew outside were left to play watchdog. Funny how even the watchdogs were more like well-trained hounds, not nosing around where they shouldn't be. It makes me wonder what kind of big bad wolves they've got on the inside. Still, a tough situations just mean more bragging rights once I kick butt and take names and get Ivy in my debt, so I wasn't complaining. There was no point overthinking it. I'll have to roll with the punches. With that in mind, I strutted into the greenhouse. As I drew closer, the greenery seemed to come alive, but I shrugged it off. It's probably just Poison Ivy's green magic doing its thing, not really my problem anyway. Stepping through the entrance, I had to pause and take it all in. The greenhouse was way bigger on the inside than it looked from the outside, more like a mansion than a greenhouse. But here's the kicker. The walls, the furniture, heck, even the floors were all made of plants, like some kind of organic architecture showpiece. Lost in the strange scene before me, my enhanced senses suddenly flared, and I had to step aside to dodge as a crossbow bolt, lighting quickly and almost entirely silent, came flying at me from the darkness. "Whoa there, Sneaky Pete," I quipped, squinting into the shadows where the attack originated. "Sneak attacks in the dark? Not cool, dude. Show yourself like a proper villain." Responding to my call-out, a figure emerged from the darkness. Clad in sleek combat gear and sporting a menacing black and orange mask, he casually tossed aside his crossbow. "Impressive reflexes," he remarked, eyeing me up and down with a hint of amusement. I narrowed my eyes, instantly recognizing the figure. "Deathstroke, Are you part of the goon squad trying to nab poison ivy? I asked, not bothering to hide my disdain. You got it, Deathstroke confirmed, drawing the katana strap to his back. But I'm just here to keep things quiet for. Oh, let's say the next 7 minutes and 35 seconds, he added, checking the time on his digital wristwatch. With his katana glinting menacingly, Deathstroke took a deliberate step forward, and I instinctively raised my palm in a halting gesture. Hold it right there, I commanded. There's no need for us to resort to violence. Deathstroke paused, his expression betraying a hint of confusion. And why's that? He inquired, his tone laced with skepticism. Well, I want a rendezvous with Poison Ivy, and you want to prevent that, I explained calmly. It seems we're at a bit of an impasse, doesn't it? Except I'm not in a rush, I continued, shrugging nonchalantly. I can just wait until your watch is up and stroll right in. After that, our paths need not cross. Deathstroke's lips twitched into a genuine chuckle. And if they snag Ivy before my time is up, he prodded. I grinned confidently. Simple. With only one exit, I'll just bide my time here and deal with the goon brigade when they show their faces, I countered. And if you're still on duty by then, I'll tail them until you're off the clock. Problem solved. Quite the strategy, kid, Deathstroke mused, his amusement palpable. It doesn't violate the terms of my agreement with the employer either. Have it your way then. Well, since we've got a bit of time to kill, how about a little chat? Let's start with your name, Deathstroke suggested, sheathing his sword and settling onto the ground with an air of nonchalance. His demeanor was almost disarming, but I knew better than to let my guard down. In the DC universe, few could match Batman's level of paranoia and combat prowess, but Deathstroke was certainly in that league. My name's Micah Foster, I responded, keeping my introduction brief. Oh, so you're the one making waves in Gotham lately, right? Deathstroke remarked, giving me an appraising look. Are you one of the Bat Brats? I shrugged in response. I don't know about making waves, but no, I'm not one of Batman's Bat Brats, as you put it, I clarified, amused by the term. Curiosity gleamed in Deathstroke's eye as he leaned in slightly. Then, what brings you to Poison Ivy's neck of the woods? Planning to toss her back in Arkham? He quizzed. I shook my head. Nope, I'm not in the Justice for Gotham camp. I'm too lazy to care about the whole vigilante shtick unless someone's killing civilians right in front of my face, I explained. As for my business with Ivy, I don't mind sharing if you're interested. I wasn't exactly on the edge of my seat, but now I'm curious, Deathstroke admitted, his tone laced with intrigue. What's a bat buddy like you doing with Poison Ivy? I flashed him a grin, loving the chance to spill the beans. Ever caught wind of Livewire's viral talk show? I'm the mastermind behind that little sensation, I boasted, giving myself a playful pat on the back. And if you're game, you could be the next big guest star. The mercenary scratched his head, looking genuinely puzzled. My kid mentioned it once or twice, he confessed. But what's Ivy got to do with your talk show? I let out a chuckle, relishing the chance to enlighten him. I came here to ask Ivy to make an appearance, I quipped, gesturing to myself. Heck, if you're interested, we'd be thrilled to have you on the show. Deathstroke pondered the idea, his expression thoughtful. That does sound intriguing, but I don't have time for such trifles, he declined, his tone firm and to the point. Shame, but I've got another proposal if you're interested, I continued, leaning in with a grin. I run a budding pharmaceutical company, and I'm in need of a top-notch security chief. The job's yours if you want it, just name your price. Deathstroke shot me a quizzical look. What kind of company needs a heavy hitter like me to handle their security? Seems like overkill, don't you think? He mused, amusement coloring his tone. Plus, with my current status as a wanted criminal, I'm not in the ideal corporate employee, he added, a hint of wryness in his voice. I let out a sigh at his words. Well, this isn't your average company. We're talking about a place with the secret sauce for a universal cancer cure, I replied, giving him a level stare. And as for your legal standing, who said anything about official employment? We're talking off the books here, I added, raising an eyebrow. Universal cancer cure? Well, you're full of surprises, the mercenary remarked, his interest piqued. Unfortunately, I'm all booked up for the foreseeable future, but I do know someone who might fit the bill for you. I'll arrange a meetup if you're interested, he offered, his tone businesslike. "If it's a recommendation from you, I'm all ears," I replied, nodding in agreement. "Just let me know the time and place, and I'll be there." "No need for that. She'll find you soon enough," Deathstroke said as he rose to his feet. "My shift's up, so I'll take my leave now, so feel free to go wild. But here's a word of advice, kid, tread carefully. The rabbit hole you're diving into goes deeper than you think. I wouldn't jump in blindly if I were you," he cautioned, striding toward the exit without waiting for a response. Chapter 80, Deeper into the Rabbit Hole 80. Stepping into the loft at the apex of the greenhouse, I was greeted by a symphony of chaos, the sounds of a brawl reverberating through the room. Without missing a beat, I swung the door open, only to freeze as a guy stumbled toward me like he'd just had one too many. I grabbed the dude by the shoulder, realizing he was more out cold than ready to rumble. With a shrug, I let him flop to the floor, his landing punctuated by a solid thud. Pushing past him, I entered the room, greeted by another scene straight out of a twisted fairy tale. The loft, much like the rest of the greenhouse, was a lush paradise of greenery. And there, in the midst of it all, sat Poison Ivy with all her iconic green charm and seductive figure, nursing her injured shoulder with a grimace that said, "Well, this isn't ideal." Surrounding her, a gang of goons brandished swords coated in some funky purple goo, waging a fierce battle against dozens of tendrils and vines surrounding Poison Ivy. Each time their weapons made contact with Ivy's vines, the tendrils would shrivel and die, only for one more vine to pop out of the ground to replace it. Looks like these fellows came prepared. It seemed that the two parties were at a standstill, but judging by Ivy's expression, it was clear that these people were pushing her to her absolute limits. "Quite the tussle you got here," I quipped, making my presence known as I eyed the scene before me. "Need a hand, or should I just stand here and enjoy the show?" I said, turning my gaze to Poison Ivy. The commotion came to an abrupt halt as all eyes turned towards me, the men wearing expressions that mingled caution with a hint of dread. Poison Ivy, however, greeted me with a disarming smile that could charm the leaves of a tree. "If you've got the heart to watch a bunch of tough guys picking on a damsel in distress," she began, her demeanor oozing vulnerability that could have fooled anyone not in the know. "Then feel free to stick around and enjoy the show," she added, batting her eyelashes innocently. "Damsel in distress? You?" I couldn't help but chuckle, shaking my head in disbelief. "Nice try, but I'm not buying it, though you do seem to be struggling," I remarked, casting a sidelong glance at the thugs closing in around us. "As a man, it's my solemn duty to prove that chivalry isn't quite dead yet," I quipped, pointing a finger at the nearest goon. With a flick of my wrist, a beam of light shot forth, piercing through his shoulder like a hot knife through butter. He crumpled to the ground, howling in pain. The other four thugs exchanged nervous glances before scattering in different directions, each hoping to make a run for it. After my experience with their friends outside, I'd expected these guys to fight to the death, so their actions were a bit surprising. I couldn't help but wonder if their positions were higher than the ones outside, but it didn't really matter. I wasn't about to let them off the hook that easily. My Scooby-Doo senses were tingling and telling me there was something interesting going on, and I'd be damned if I didn't get to the bottom of it. "Did I say you can leave?" I demanded, calling upon my shadow control powers. The shadows surged to life, enveloping the fleeing thugs in their inky embrace until only their noses poked out, leaving them squirming like a bunch of caterpillars. Before they could even start struggling, vines emerged from the ground, shredding through my shadow bindings and impaling the thugs, ending their resistance before it could even begin. It didn't take a detective to figure out they were now very much deceased. I turned to Poison Ivy with a quizzical expression. "Well, that was rather direct," I remarked, shaking my head in disbelief. "They could have spilled the beans on who sent them if you hadn't, turned them into plant food," I added, crossing my arms in mild frustration. "There's no need for interrogation. I already know who these people are and who sent them," Poison Ivy stated firmly, her gaze fixed on the fallen men. "They minions of the League of Assassins." Poison Ivy's words caught me off guard. "League of Assassins? Are you having some kind of turf war as fellow eco-terrorists or something?" I quipped, arching an eyebrow in curiosity. Poison Ivy regarded me with a knowing look. I've never seen eye to eye with the demon head, but this goes beyond our personal disagreements, she explained cryptically. Let's just say I declined an invitation to a rather exclusive club, and the demon head, being a member, didn't take it lightly, she added, her tone tinged with a hint of mystery. An exclusive club of villains, the thought made me chuckle. Is it the secret society, or maybe the Legion of Doom? I inquired, raising an eyebrow with a smirk. It made total sense, in that twisted, comic book villain kind of way. I mean, who in their right mind would shell out the big bucks for Deathstroke just to play glorified bodyguard? And let's be real, Deathstroke wouldn't stoop to babysitting duty even if you paid him in solid gold. Now this secret society of villains? It's like a recurring nightmare in the DC universe, starring all the big bads you'd rather not meet in a dark alley. We're talking Lex Luthor, Vandal Savage, and Gorilla Grodd. These guys aren't just brawlers, they're masterminds with more resources than a billionaire playboy on a bender. But here's the kicker. They're about as united as a bag of cats in a room full of rocking chairs. They only team up when they've got some epic scheme brewing or when they're scared the Justice League might crash their party. And when it's all said and done, they scatter like roaches when you turn on the lights. What's more, there's zero camaraderie among these villains. It's more like a game of King of the Hill, where the big shots use the smaller fries as cannon fodder in their never-ending power struggles. No wonder Ivy's giving that mess a wide berth. Poison Ivy shot me a skeptical glance as she strolled toward me, her green eyes shimmering with curiosity. You're pretty well informed for a guy who popped up out of the blue, she remarked, her tone a mix of suspicion and intrigue. Harley and one other friend mentioned you once or twice, said you had a certain charm, she added, flashing a coy smile that seemed to carry a hint of floral fragrance with it. I instinctively raised a hand to keep her at bay. Hold your horses, devil woman. I know all about your pheromones and I've come prepared, I declared, wrapping myself in a protective cloak of shadows. Normally I'd be more than happy to be charmed by a pretty lady like you, but I'm here on business, I explained, trying to keep my cool despite the tantalizing scent in the air. Poison Ivy arched an eyebrow, a hint of amusement dancing in her eyes. Well, Harley wasn't pulling my ivy chain after all. You really are something, she said with a chuckle, the sweet fragrance fading away into the breeze. So, spill the beans. What brings you to my humble abode, handsome? She leaned in, her gaze piercing. Well, it's like this. Chapter 81, The Beginning of the End 81. Lounging on my bed in the comfort of my apartment, I let my mind wander aimlessly, contemplating the mysteries of life while staring up at the ceiling. The idea of finding a new place had been on my mind for a while now. A bigger, more convenient spot sounded like a dream, but somehow, the time to make it happen had never quite materialized. Maybe tomorrow would be the day for some house-hunting adventures. But hey, I won't bore you with those mundane details. Now about that rendezvous with Poison Ivy. You're probably itching for the juicy bits, huh? Well, let me assure you, it went down smoother than a well-mixed cocktail. With my knack for acting and persuasion, it was practically a done deal from the get-go. Sure, Ivy initially eyed me like I was spouting nonsense when I pitched the idea of her gracing Livewire's talk show with her presence, but a little verbal finesse was all it took to steer her in the right direction. I didn't bother lecturing her on the ethical pitfalls of using eco-terrorism to spread her message. There was no need to ruffle her green feathers that much. Instead, I painted a picture of the vast audience she could reach through Livewire's show, convincing her of the unparalleled opportunity to influence minds and hearts. I mean, come on, millions of eyeballs glued to screens worldwide. It's a platform begging to be utilized. And hey, if Ivy could sway even just one person, it'd be a win in my book. It definitely beats terrorizing folks with a leafy onslaught, wouldn't you say? As the day wound down, I couldn't shake the thought that influencing just one person would be a worst-case scenario. I mean, picture this, two captivating villainesses advocating for Mother Earth. It's bound to strike a chord with more than a few souls out there. And once Poison Ivy catches a glimpse of the power of positive reinforcement over her usual leafy chaos, she'll be putty in my hands. What? You thought I went through all this trouble to boost Livewire's stupid talk show? Who do you think I am? This operation is a meticulous setup designed to snare villains like Ivy and guide them onto the path of redemption, starting with the Green Queen herself. Now, reforming someone as deeply entrenched in bitterness as Poison Ivy won't be a cakewalk, and reforming her public image was even more tricky. But hey, nothing's impossible, right? With the system at my disposal, the options are endless. Picture this: a miraculous seed that produces life-saving medicines tended to by Ivy herself. Just one of the many ideas swirling around in my head. And Ivy's powers, they're a game changer, capable of solving crises that have plagued the world for ages, even without help from the system. Take those barren deserts lying around the globe, for instance. With Ivy's touch and a bit of work to develop plants that could thrive in such harsh environments, they could bloom into lush gardens, teeming with exotic plants and resources. Who in their right mind would pass up a deal like that, even if it means vouching for Poison Ivy and working to clear her name of every crime she's committed? It's a no-brainer. With my mind set on keeping Poison Ivy's potential to myself, I had no intention of handing her over to some country. I mean, who in their right mind would give up such a gold mine? Nope, she'd be working for me, and I'd be the one pulling the strings, negotiating on her behalf. It's all about striking a balance, getting those who want to tap into her green magic to play by our rules and enforce environmental laws to protect the planet. But hey, easier said than done, right? I mean, imagine negotiating with entire countries. It's a bit like trying to wrangle a pack of alpha wolves. And what's to stop them from just swooping in and snatching Ivy away once they realize what she's capable of? In this dog-eat-dog world, governments are the top dogs. But hey, no sweat. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither is my empire of influence. It's a long-term plan, and I'll strike when the time is right. For now, though, it's back to my daily grind of checking out the daily deals in the system shop. Gotta stay sharp and keep building that power base, one deal at a time. Navigating through the system interface, I found myself staring at the daily deals section. And what do we have here? The random bloodline, on sale for a whopping 90% discount, bringing it down to just 1,000 points. Now, that's a steal. But hold your horses, because this deal comes with a bit of a catch. It's basically like a gacha, where you roll the dice and hope for the best. Each purchase gives you a different bloodline, with its own strengths, talents, and maybe even a fatal weakness or two. Naturally, I had the option to not integrate with the randomly granted bloodline, but then again, there were no refunds, meaning my hard-earned points would go to waste. Talk about high stakes. Now, normally, I'm not one to fall for the allure of gacha, but I've already done it once, so why not? I mean, who wants to risk their hard-earned points on a game of chance? But hey, when you've got a balance like mine, 5,600 points, thank you very much, you start thinking, why the heck not? You see, spending all that time duking it out underwater with the jellyfish people really paid off. Turns out, being a war hero has its perks, including a nice little boost to the all-point balance as word about me reached all the people in Atlantis, including the named characters, making them for their own opinions of me. And let's not forget about the fame and glory that comes with kicking Eclipso's butt and going on all sorts of wild adventures. Word travels fast, even in the surface world, and that means more points in the bank for yours truly. With a shrug and a sense of resigned acceptance, I decided to take the plunge and see what this random bloodline had in store for me. After all, what's life without a little unpredictability? As I clicked the purchase button, my point balance took a hit, dropping down to 4,600. The prompt message that popped up before me revealed my new acquisition, the Squirrel Scribe bloodline. My initial reaction? Utter confusion mixed with a healthy dose of disappointment. Squirrel Scribe? What on earth was that supposed to mean? According to the description, it turned out to be some ancient scholarly lineage capable of communicating with squirrels and enlisting their help in transcribing documents. But here's the kicker. They could only write nonsensical poetry. Talk about a letdown. I couldn't help but feel a surge of frustration bubbling up inside me. Seriously? Squirrels and poetry? What kind of twisted joke was this? I briefly entertained the thought of hunting down a squirrel and demanding answers, but quickly dismissed the idea as ludicrous. But hey, I'd already dropped 1,000 points on this nonsense, so might as well see it through, right? Steeling myself for whatever ridiculousness awaited me, I moved on to the next purchase, watching as my point balance dwindled even further. And what did I get this time? Brace yourself, it was the Tickle Tornado Bloodline. Just the name alone was enough to make me roll my eyes in exasperation and give me the urge to instantly dismiss. But curiosity got the better of me, and I begrudgingly read the description. Apparently, this bloodline was passed down by now extinct mischievous creatures masquerading as kindly old men, seeking out sad children in their rooms and tickling away their woes in the dead of night. I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief at the absurdity of it all. Old men sneaking into kids' rooms to tickle away their sorrows, aren't they just friggin' pedos? Thank God they went extinct. Seriously, I muttered to myself, feeling a mix of frustration and irritation. Are they even trying to hide the fact this is a scam? But as much as I wanted to throw in the towel and chalk it up as a loss, I knew I couldn't. After all, I'd already blown through 2,000 points on this gamble. I couldn't just walk away empty-handed. So, with a sigh and a sense of resignation, I braced myself for the next round of disappointment and clicked on the option to purchase another bloodline. Here's hoping the third time's the charm. Chapter 82, Giving Up 82. Amidst the clutter of my room, with a floating system interface in front of me like some techno-oracle, I descended deeper into the murky abyss known as Gacha Hell. The screen taunted me with its absurd offerings, each purchase dragging me further into the pit of despair. Ah, pain, anguish, and despair, I muttered, staring at the screen as if it held the secrets of the universe. Whoever came up with this evil creation is surely Satan's unwanted bastard. Even Satan himself would disown such a hope-leeching, despair-inducing monstrosity. With a sigh heavy enough to rattle the windows, I recounted my tragic journey through the land of pointless purchases. Marshmallow magicians, living disco balls, dizzy doodlers, each bloodline more ridiculous than the last. And to add insult to injury, I'd even dipped into my savings, converting a cool $2.4 million into points just to keep the disappointment train rolling. The best I'd managed to snag so far was a treasure goblin bloodline, but even that came with its own set of quirks. Sure, it would make me more sensitive to valuables now, but at the cost of slowly turning into a friggin' green midget. Just my luck. But hey, they say 99% of gamblers stop before they hit the jackpot, right? Well, call me Mr. 1%, because I refuse to give up hope. With gritted teeth and a dwindling bank account, I threw caution to the wind and bought another 2,000 points to get 2 more random bloodlines. I had already resolved not to spend any more than 10,000 points, and wish 8,000 points down the drain, I only had 2 more tries left. Congratulations, you've acquired the Astral Void Beholder bloodline. Void Beholder? I echoed, a mix of disbelief and resignation creeping into my voice. What kind of bull wait? That actually sounds good. I paused halfway through my grumbling as I took another look at the name. Lost in the depths of gacha despair, I stumbled upon a glimmer of hope in the form of the Astral Void Beholder bloodline. It sounded promising, at least compared to the marshmallow magicians and living disco balls that had plagued my previous purchases. Astral Void Beholder, a species of deep space creatures that roam the edges of the universe of a long-dead world. These creatures are known as the undisputed kings of the starry sky, using their bare bodies to traverse the vacuum of space and starlight as sustenance. However, their existence remains unknown as they only appear in dying worlds, ushering their end. With bated breath, I delved into the description. So awesome, I mused aloud, my excitement building up with every word I read. Could it be, have I finally struck gold? But as the words sank in, a creeping sense of disbelief washed over me. This couldn't be real, could it? The gacha had already played enough cruel jokes on me. Surely this was just another trick. I blinked, reading the description again and again, hoping for some clarity. It sounded too good to be true, like a cosmic jackpot in a sea of mediocrity. The prompt appeared, mocking me with its simplicity. Would you like to integrate with Astral Void Beholder bloodline? It asked as if the answer were obvious. Hell yes, I exclaimed, my heart racing with anticipation. I hit the confirmation button, bracing myself for whatever came next. And then, it happened. A strange sensation washed over me as if I were being pulled into the very fabric of space itself. It was a sensation beyond words, something that had to be felt to be understood. For a moment, I felt like I wasn't just occupying space, I was space. An empty void, vast and boundless, stretching out into eternity. Amidst the confusion and disappointment, I couldn't help but feel a tingling sensation on my forehead, as if a tiny invisible bug was tap dancing up there. It was odd, to say the least, but hardly the cosmic transformation I'd been hoping for. Damn, is this another scam? I grumbled to myself, running my hands over my body in search of any changes. Nothing. Zilch. Nada. I was still just plain old me, with no superpowers or cosmic upgrades in sight. But then, out of nowhere, a strange longing gripped me, pulling me toward the window like a magnet. Without hesitation, I dashed over, flung it open, and clambered up to the rooftop, my eyes fixated on the twinkling stars above. As I gazed at the night sky, a sense of peace washed over me, calming my troubled mind. And then, something extraordinary happened. My consciousness began to drift, untethered from my physical form, until I was floating above myself, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight. Before I knew it, I was soaring higher and higher, leaving behind the confines of Earth and venturing out into the vast expanse of the cosmos. It was like a surreal journey through the wonders of the universe, witnessing cosmic spectacles that defied imagination. A supernova erupted in a blaze of light, a black hole devoured everything in its path, and two planets collided in a cataclysmic dance of destruction. It was a breathtaking spectacle, but more than anything it was humbling. As I stood there, gazing up at the vast expanse of stars, a profound sense of insignificance washed over me. It was like a slap in the face from the universe itself, reminding me of just how small and insignificant my existence truly was. All the grand plans and lofty ambitions I'd harbored seemed laughably futile in the face of such cosmic enormity. Did any of it really matter? Did anything I'd done in this world, or even in my previous life, hold any real significance in the grand scheme of things? Lost in a whirlwind of existential doubt, I suddenly snapped back to reality, my mind reeling from the overwhelming experience. But instead of feeling enlightened or inspired, all I felt was a profound emptiness. I looked down at my hands, the same hands that had worked tirelessly to build a life for myself in this new world. But now, they felt strangely foreign, disconnected from any sense of purpose or meaning. For so long, I'd been driven by a burning desire to leave my mark on this world, to carve out a legacy that would endure for countless years. But now, faced with the vastness of the cosmos, that desire felt hollow and meaningless. In that moment, all my motivation drained away, leaving me adrift in a sea of uncertainty. What was the point of it all? What difference could one person possibly make in a universe so incomprehensibly vast? As I stood there, grappling with these existential questions, I couldn't help but feel a sense of profound disillusionment settles over me. As I stood there, lost in the void of my own thoughts, a sudden chittering sound broke through the silence, pulling me back to reality. I turned to see Ratigan, my faithful rat companion, who seemed to have followed me to the room at some point, his tiny fists raised in what seemed like frustration. "It's you, Rat. What do you want?" I muttered, my voice devoid of any real emotion. Ratigan continued to chitter angrily as if trying to convey some urgent message to me. Yeah, I know we're connected mentally," I sighed, feeling a pang of guilt at my own apathy that dissipated as quickly as it appeared. "But honestly, buddy, I'm not really in the mood for any excitement right now. I'm just not feeling it." I could almost sense Ratigan's disappointment, his little eyes pleading with me to snap out of my funk and pay attention to him. "Look, I'm sorry, but you'll have to find your entertainment elsewhere," I murmured, my gaze dropping to the ground. "I don't think I'm going to be up to much of anything you'd find interesting from now on. I've got enough money to get by, so I might as well just exist, you know." I could feel the weight of my words hanging heavily in the air as I spoke, the sense of resignation settling over me like a thick fog. "You once told me you'd go back into the void if I ever stopped being entertaining," I said, putting up a fake smile. "I think now might be the time. Not that I really care what you do from now on anyway. Chapter 83, Hunted 83. The Skylux Tower, an epitome of opulence towering over New York, boasted of luxurious apartments fit for the elite. At its pinnacle sat the prestigious penthouse, a haven of extravagance complete with its own pool and a sprawling veranda. A young man reclined on a pool chair, clad in nothing but shorts, his gaze fixed upon the twinkling stars above. Nearby, a regal rat nibbled on a morsel, occasionally shooting disapproving glances at the man as if deeply disappointed. Unfazed by the rodent's judgmental stares, the young man remained lost in his stargazing reverie until the tranquility was shattered by the thunderous roar of approaching helicopters. 3 choppers closed in on the penthouse, their blades slicing through the serene night air. With a resigned sigh, the young man rose from his chair, his expression tinged with apathy. "Already a year," he muttered under his breath, his voice tinged with irritation. "Don't you people know when to throw in the towel?" As the helicopters hovered over the penthouse, a cadre of men clad in combat gear jumped off, landing before the young man and surrounding him. With effortless grace, the first assassin leaped into action, his movements fluid as he retrieved a handful of gleaming shurikens from his concealed robes. With a flick of his wrist, he sent the deadly blades slicing through the air toward the young man. Yet before they could reach their target, the man's form blurred and vanished, leaving behind only a ripple of distorted space. In a blink, he reappeared behind the startled assailant, his presence unsettling. The young man regarded the assassin with a quizzical expression, as if mildly inconvenienced by the attempt on his life. "Is this really the best you've got?" he mused, his voice laced with a hint of boredom. With a casual flick of his hand, he touched the assassin's back, causing the very fabric of space to contort and twist around him until he vanished into thin air, leaving no trace behind. Meanwhile, the other assassins wasted no time, capitalizing on the distraction to deploy small devices around the penthouse. In an instant, these devices sprang to life, erecting a shimmering purplish barrier that sealed off the area. Undeterred, the young man calmly attempted to manipulate space once more, only to find his efforts futile against the barrier's resistance. Annoyance flashed across his features as he raised both hands, grasping something no one else could see. With a sharp yank, a cacophony of shattering glass reverberated through the air as the barrier crumbled before him, dissipating like smoke in the wind. "Space-stabilizing devices? Now you've really pissed me off," he remarked, his tone tinged with irritation. With a dismissive flick of his wrist, the assassins were forcefully expelled from the penthouse, their forms hurtling through the air before plummeting to the ground below. Turning his gaze toward the hovering helicopters, the young man's expression hardened. "Killing you would only cause too much damage," he declared coolly. "Consider yourselves lucky and leave while you still can." The helicopter drivers wasted no time in heeding the young man's warning, swiftly retreating from the vicinity of the penthouse. With a nonchalant shrug, Micah strolled over to one of the devices left behind by the assassins, eyeing it with a mix of curiosity and annoyance. It was a peculiar contraption, a fist-sized sphere crackling with green energy, its surface pulsating with electric arcs. Ever since acquiring the Astral Void Beholder bloodline, Micah had sought solace in seclusion, retreating to a remote cabin nestled deep within the mountains. It was his sanctuary, a place where he hoped to find peace away from the chaos of the world. Yet fate had other plans for him. His involvement in thwarting the secret society's recruitment efforts, particularly in saving Poison Ivy from their clutches, had inadvertently drawn their attention. Despite his attempts to vanish into obscurity, Micah found himself relentlessly pursued by the organization's agents. The tranquility he sought was shattered by the persistent threat of assassination attempts. Initially, Micah had dispatched the first wave of assassins with ease, hoping to dissuade further incursions. But the secret society proved relentless, sending subsequent waves to hound him in his mountain retreat. Frustration simmered within him as he realized that hiding was no longer viable. Reluctantly, Micah decided to return to the city, hoping that the presence of so many people would better the secret society. Little did he know, however, that not only would the secret society remain undeterred, but he'd find himself facing even more troublesome situations. Arnold Wesker, once the ventriloquist and now the man Micah had entrusted with his company, finally tracked him down. He launched into a tirade about Micah's sudden disappearance during a critical phase for the company. Despite his newfound apathy, Micah couldn't brush off Wesker's concerns. After all, he had placed a considerable burden on the former villain's shoulders. Enduring an hour of Wesker's complaints, Micah listened intently as he recounted the events that had unfolded within the company during Micah's 4-month absence. Deathstroke had delivered on his promise by sending his own daughter to oversee the company's security, Rose Wilson, known as Ravager. Initially failing to find Micah, she had struck a deal with Wesker in his absence, officially assuming the role of chief of security. Unlike her infamous father, Rose was not a wanted criminal, facilitating her smooth appointment. Despite the hefty price tag attached to her services, Rose proved to be an invaluable asset, effectively safeguarding the company and thwarting numerous attempts to steal the formula for the cancer cure. In the realm of medical breakthroughs, the company had struck gold with the cancer cure. Thanks to a strategic partnership with Wayne Industries, the cure sailed through its testing phase and sales skyrocketed. Despite its affordability, the cure generated substantial revenue for both companies, paving the way for expansion and prosperity. Dr. Victor Fries, rebranded simply as Dr. Fries, found redemption and legal absolution with the assistance of Jean Paul Valley, also known as Azrael. With his wife, Nora, now cured and revived, Dr. Fries emerged as the leading scientist in the company's medical research division. Leveraging his vast network and the company's resources, Dr. Fries assembled a team of top-tier researchers to aid in his endeavors. With the aid of the Father Box, a cutting-edge piece of technology, they ventured beyond the confines of the cancer cure, developing treatments for a myriad of ailments. Their success propelled the company into the forefront of the pharmaceutical industry, drawing envy and ire from established players. Acknowledging the shifting landscape and mindful of their partnership with Wayne Enterprises, Wesker made a strategic move. He authorized the release of the cancer cure formula, extending an olive branch to competitors while cementing the company's reputation as a force to be reckoned with. Wesker's strategic move yielded a plethora of benefits. Firstly, it facilitated the global distribution of the cancer cure, ensuring its accessibility as pharmaceutical companies worldwide began manufacturing and selling it. With the original cure available at an affordable price, competitors couldn't hike their prices too high without facing backlash. Moreover, the company's name, Eterna Cures, spread like wildfire across the globe, earning praise and admiration from the masses. With Livewire championing the company and its medicines, marketing expenses dwindled, bolstering sales and attracting top-tier researchers to join their ranks. In Micah's absence, Wesker proved himself a capable leader, evolving from a former gangster and eccentric to a savvy businessman capable of steering the company to success. His decisions consistently benefited the company, earning him the respect and trust of all employees. Meanwhile, Livewire's talk show soared to new heights of popularity. After Poison Ivy's appearance, numerous villains and vixens clamored for a spot on the show. Some discussed their causes, while others indulged in shameless self-promotion. Despite the diverse array of guests, the show remained highly anticipated worldwide, with Wesker ensuring its accessibility through multilingual translations and dubbing. Poison Ivy became a recurring guest on the show, advocating for environmental protection with each appearance. While her impact seemed gradual and subtle, it wasn't without effect. Slowly but surely, her advocacy resonated with some viewers, inspiring them to join the cause and take action. Although it didn't save the environment overnight, it marked a significant shift from Ivy's previous terrorist activities, leading her to dial back on her radical endeavors. Of course, not everyone applauded the notion of eco-terrorists and villainous celebrities gracing talk shows. Some governmental agencies attempted to exploit the platform to apprehend the villains, Ivy included, but their initial efforts fell flat. In response, Rose Wilson, acting on Wesker's instructions, arranged for the show to be conducted in clandestine locations, thwarting any further attempts at interference. As the sole proprietor of both the company and the talk show, Micah's bank accounts swelled with hundreds of millions of dollars over the past year. Despite his prolonged absence and minimal involvement, his wealth skyrocketed, catapulting him into the ranks of the super-rich without lifting a finger besides recruiting Wesker and the others before his disappearance, and setting some long-term plans and goals. Chapter 84, Infinity Island 84. I'd hoped the secret society, or at least the demon head, would throw in the towel after taking enough losses. Micah remarked with a weary sigh, his fingers turning the space-stabilizing device over in his hand. But they just kept doubling down, and now they're even developing countermeasures for my power. Just how the hell did I manage to ruffle their feathers so badly? He added, crushing the sphere in his palm. It seemed his retreat into obscurity and pursuit of peace wouldn't be as straightforward as Micah had envisioned, not with the secret society doggedly on his heels no matter where he went. Well, looks like I'll have to teach them an even harsher lesson before they back off, he muttered, casting a determined glance at Ratigan. It's been a while since we've had some excitement, hasn't it, Rat? Whatever your reason for sticking around, today I'll give you quite the spectacle, he continued. Ratigan shot him a disdainful look and emitted a series of disgruntled chitters, but ultimately settled on Micah's shoulder, cozying up as if it were his own personal throne. Micah's otherwise apathetic expression cracked with a fleeting smile, though it vanished almost as quickly as it appeared. First stop, Infinity Island, he declared, ripping open a rift in space with one deft motion and stepping into the swirling cosmic void that beckoned before him. Infinity Island, nestled in the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean, boasted a striking feature: twin volcanoes that dominated its landscape. Once home to native inhabitants, the island's fate took a dark turn in the 17th century when Ra's al Ghul, thirsting for power and control, seized it. With ruthless efficiency, he enslaved the islanders, transforming their home into a paradise for his followers and a hellish nightmare for the enslaved. Today was no exception. Descendants of the island's original inhabitants toiled under the oppressive gaze of Ra's al Ghul's minions, their labor extracting the island's wealth to swell the coffers of their tyrannical overlord. Each day unfolded in a cruel routine, where compliance brought a scant reprieve from punishment, and rebellion invited brutal retribution. For these natives, resignation was survival. They understood the harsh reality. Obedience meant surviving with minimal lashes, while defiance led to a gruesome demise under the whip. To them, Ra's al Ghul was not a man but a malevolent force, an immortal entity who bartered his soul for immortality, wielding the secrets of life as yet dealing nothing but death. He was a demon incarnate, a specter spawned from the fiery depths of hell, and not a day passed without the islanders praying for his return to the infernal abyss from whence he came. The island's oppressive routine shattered as a fracture ripped open the sky, unveiling the starry expanse beyond. Through this rift emerged a young man, clad in a sleek black suit with a crimson shirt, accompanied by a regal rodent perched on his shoulder. Both the island natives and Raz's minions took notice of the intruder, prompting a swift reaction from the latter, who swiftly encircled the newcomer as he touched down on the island's sandy shore. Unfazed by the sudden assault, Micah's apathetic gaze swept over the assassins closing in on him. In an instant, the shadows beneath him coalesced into solid tendrils, striking out at the attackers with lethal force. Some were sent hurtling away, their bodies broken upon impact, while others writhed in agony from crippling injuries. Micah spared no glance for the fallen as he continued to wield his powers with precision. Javelins of golden light materialized around him, skewering the remaining assassins who dared to encroach upon his space. Once he dispatched the assassins, Micah's attention shifted to the twin volcanoes dominating the island's landscape. "Ra's al Ghul, you coward, come out and face me!" His voice echoed across the desolate island, a challenge thrown into the void. But the only response that greeted Micah's call was an eerie silence, broken only by the faint rustle of the League's assassins, scrambling in the shadows. "Fine, if you won't come to me, then I'll bring the fight to you," Micah's frustration boiled over, his body lifting into the air above the island. With a commanding gesture, he tore open a spatial rift, revealing the vast expanse of deep space beyond. Focused and determined, he extended his hands toward the rift, a surge of tangible purple energy flowing from him and into the void. Suddenly, the rift trembled, its stability threatened as a massive meteor hurtled through from the other side, crackling with purplish energy. Micah wasted no time, directing the course of the huge celestial body, and with a decisive motion, the meteor burst forth from the portal, hurtling down toward Infinity Island and obliterating a significant portion of its southern shoreline upon impact. Despite never actively training his newfound powers, Micah's astral void beholder bloodline had quietly absorbed starlight over the past year, steadily enhancing his abilities. What's more, as the assassins sent after him learned of his shadow and light powers and began devising countermeasures, he was forced to rely on the inherent strengths granted by his bloodline, gradually honing his skills in their usage. Micah found the whole situation both amusing and exasperating. Despite his attempts to vanish from sight, the secret society relentlessly pursued him, intent on eliminating a possible threat and inadvertently pushing Micah to grow stronger and discover new ways to use all his powers, all while he simply yearned for solitude. But none of that mattered now. With the situation reaching a critical juncture, Micah was determined to impart a lesson to the leaders of the secret society, Ra's al Ghul in particular, one that would leave a lasting impression. As Micah continued to taunt his unseen adversary, his frustration grew palpable. With determination etched on his face, he extended both hands towards the unstable spatial rift, unleashing waves of tangible purple energy into the void. The rift quivered, its instability exacerbated as a barrage of meteorites materialized on the other side, hurtling towards the widening portal. Hide all you want, Raz. If you insist on skulking in the shadows, then you'll meet your fate along with this island. Micah's voice carried with authority, his body pulsating with purple energy as the meteorites drew closer to the spatial tier. But just as they approached, a sudden blue barrier enveloped the island, ensnaring Micah and the rift within its confines, disrupting his control over the space. The rift convulsed violently before vanishing altogether. Before Micah could process the abrupt turn of events, a bolt of yellow lightning erupted from the volcanoes at the island's center, hurtling directly toward him. Caught off guard, Micah reacted swiftly, conjuring 5 hard light barriers in succession. The lightning bolt shattered the first barrier instantaneously, followed by the second, third, and fourth in rapid succession. Only the 5th barrier managed to momentarily stall the bolt's advance, but it too succumbed, allowing the lightning to surge past. As the lightning dissipated, it coalesced into the form of a man clad in a tight gold and black suit adorned with a lightning bolt emblem at its center. With a physique that emanated strength and power, the man before Micah possessed a commanding presence, his short black hair complementing his stern expression. Micah barely had a moment to scrutinize his features before the man swung his fist, tendrils of golden lightning crackling around it. Micah met the attack head-on, his own fist pulsating with light magic as it collided with the man's. Their fists clashed with a resounding thud, sending shockwaves rippling across the island and disturbing the tranquil ocean below. After a brief exchange, Micah leaped back, taking a moment to size up his opponent. King Tgthegood of Kandhak, Micah acknowledged, offering a slight bow. "Forgive me if I've given offense, Your Majesty," he added, his tone deferential. Black Adam, also known as Tgthegood, regarded Micah with narrowed eyes. "Courtesy is admirable, but it won't save you today," he declared calmly, crossing his arms. "However, I'll entertain your words before delivering your demise," he conceded. Though inwardly amused by the man's arrogance, Micah maintained his composure. "Thank you for your generosity, Your Majesty. I'm curious about the terms the secret society offered in exchange for your allegiance," he inquired. Black Adam scoffed at the question. "What concern is it of yours?" he retorted sharply. "I doubt there's anything the secret society can offer that I can't also provide," Micah responded calmly. "Simply name your desire, and I'll have it fulfilled. That way, we can part ways without harming one another," he proposed. Black Adam cast a disdainful glance at Micah. "Do you truly believe you can harm me? You're nothing but prey ensnared in a trap," he declared, tendrils of golden lightning crackling around his formidable form. "You lack the qualifications to negotiate with me," he continued, his hand outstretched towards Micah. "Today, your choice is simple. Resist and meet your demise, or surrender and meet your demise all the same," he concluded, his tone dripping with certainty as he prepared to attack. Chapter 85, The Irony 85. Observing Black Adam swing his fist once more, Micah inwardly sighed. Fighting such a formidable opponent in this situation was far from ideal, but it seemed he had little choice but to demonstrate his power. With determination coursing through him, Micah activated his bloodline, his skin transforming to a deep obsidian hue, twin horns sprouting from his forehead. Between them, a slit emerged, gradually widening to reveal a third eye resembling a portal to the cosmos, a radiant blue orb adorned with shimmering stars. As Micah completed his transformation, the stabilizing barrier surrounding the island began to quake, and as he met Black Adam's attack head-on, the barrier shattered. The fabric of space itself became turbulent around Micah's fist, generating numerous minuscule dimensional rifts imperceptible to the naked eye. These rifts tore into Black Adam's arm, gouging out small, barely noticeable chunks of flesh and skin that vanished into the unknown. Sensing the imminent danger, Black Adam swiftly retreated, regarding Micah with a mixture of alarm and surprise. Micah regarded Black Adam with an even gaze, the space around him warping subtly. "Now that I am no longer a helpless prey waiting for its demise, are you willing to listen?" he inquired calmly, his voice tinged with a hint of disinterest, as if he didn't care for his opponent's reply regardless of what he would decide. Black Adam's gaze narrowed as he fixed his eyes on Micah. He had indeed struck a deal with the secret society, but it entailed eliminating the young man standing before him. Fully briefed on Micah's formidable abilities, including his command over space, Black Adam had initially felt confident in his ability to kill him, particularly with the space-stabilizing barrier encasing the island. However, now that the barrier had vanished, Black Adam realized that forcing Micah to stay and fight or even defeat him was far from certain. Doubts began to gnaw at him. Perhaps he couldn't secure victory after all. Crossing his arms, Black Adam regarded Micah with a contemplative expression. "It appears you possess the qualifications to bargain with me," he conceded, his tone measured. "However, whether you can fulfill my demands remains to be seen," he continued, his voice tinged with skepticism. Micah met Black Adam's gaze with a hint of concealed amusement. "Then let us hear your terms, your majesty," he replied calmly, his demeanor unwavering. Black Adam cleared his throat before speaking. "There exists a newly developed cure circulating in the world. Regrettably, my kingdom has been diplomatically isolated, and we have been denied access to it," he explained. "In exchange for my assistance, the secret society promised to provide a steady supply of this medicine," he concluded, his expression grave. Micah's features contorted into a curious expression at Black Adam's revelation. "You're referring to the cancer cure developed by Eternacures, aren't you?" he inquired, prompting an immediate nod from Black Adam. Micah couldn't stifle a chuckle at the confirmation, which earned him a sharp glare from the imposing figure before him. "Apologies, it's just. The irony of this situation strikes me as rather amusing," Micah explained, raising his hands in a conciliatory gesture as he noticed Black Adam's displeased expression. "I don't mean to mock your noble sentiment to your people. It's just that I'm the owner of the company that created this cure, and yet here you are trying to kill me," he elaborated, shaking his head in mild exasperation. "If it's just the cancer cure you want, I can do you one better. I'll have my people establish a branch of our company in Kandak," he stated. "Not only will we provide the cancer cure, but our latest products as well. The prices will be within reach for all," he assured, his tone earnest. Black Adam regarded Micah with a skeptical gaze, pondering his proposal for a moment before finally nodding. "Very well, I'll take your word for it. You have 2 months to fulfill your promise," he declared, his form beginning to ascend into the air. "Should you uphold your end of the bargain, you'll be welcomed as an esteemed guest and friend in my palace," he continued, his voice resonating with authority. However, should you fail, I will hunt you to the ends of the earth, and you will face the consequences of your deceit," he warned, his tone ominously foreboding as he prepared to depart. "Wait just a moment," Micah's voice rang out, causing Black Adam to halt his ascent through the sky. "Tell me, is Ra's al Ghul lurking on this island?" he inquired, his gaze fixed intently on the departing figure. Black Adam shook his head dismissively. "That cowardly demon head? No, he wouldn't dare show his face here," he scoffed, disdain dripping from his words. "This was merely a trap orchestrated to ensnare and eliminate you," he added, his tone dripping with contempt for Ra's al Ghul's tactics. He himself wouldn't stoop to using such cowardly strategies, or even taking part in them, if it weren't for the sake of his people. Micah's frustration was evident as he let out an exasperated sigh. "I suspected as much. And what of the technology stabilizing space?" he pressed, his curiosity piqued. "Do you know who engineered it?" Black Adam nodded knowingly. Gorilla Grodd was behind those devices. He and the demon head were keen on either capturing or eliminating you, he disclosed, his tone filled with disapproval. "Do you require something else?" Micah shook his head, absorbing the information. "That's all I needed to know. Farewell, Your Majesty," he bid respectfully, a note of finality in his tone. With a nod, Black Adam transformed into a streak of golden lightning, disappearing into the vast expanse of the sky above. Micah watched his departure with a mixture of disappointment and resignation. He knew it was the wise choice to avoid a confrontation, especially with such a formidable foe in enemy territory. Despite his confidence in his abilities, he understood the risks of engaging Black Adam without a clear advantage. He knew all of this, and yet, deep down, Micah still wanted to test his strength against the might of Black. In the end, his apathy won, and he forced himself to take a step back, letting the King of Kahndaq indulge in his arrogance. As he contemplated his next move, Ratigan poked his head out from within his jacket, emitting a series of agitated chitters. Micah sighed, addressing the rat firmly. "Relax, will you, rat? There was no need to fight that guy," he said, gently pushing the rodent back into his jacket. However, Ratigan continued to express his discontent with a flurry of indignant chitters, much to Micah's bemusement. Micah shrugged, his apathy evident in his tone. "So what if he's arrogant? It's none of our concern," he remarked with a scoff. "If I had to put every conceited fellow in their place, I'd never have a moment's peace," he added, receiving a retaliatory nip from Ratigan. Unfazed, Micah raised his hand, looking at Ratigan with emotionless eyes that betrayed a hint of annoyance and fondness. "You're a real pain in the ass sometimes. But fine, if you want some entertainment, I'll see what I can do," he conceded, eliciting an unimpressed chitter from Ratigan. With Ratigan settled on his shoulder, Micah resumed his contemplation, his mind already turning to his next course of action. After a moment of contemplation, Micah's gaze shifted to the mines where the island's natives toiled under the oppressive rule of Ra's al Ghul. A faint grin spread across his face, a spark of determination igniting in his eyes. "Let's see how long you can hide once I drag you into the spotlight," he muttered to himself, his voice tinged with resolve. With a sudden burst of energy, Micah teleported directly in front of one of the young islanders, startling him from his labor. "Hey, you there, come over here," Micah called out, his tone surprisingly calm amidst the harsh surroundings. The young man, clearly accustomed to obedience, approached cautiously, his eyes betraying a mix of fear and curiosity. "Why, yes, sir," he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Micah studied him for a moment before speaking again. "You've been working in these mines for as long as you can remember, haven't you?" The young man nodded meekly, confirming Micah's suspicions. "Do you want to leave this place, to escape the lash of Ra's al Ghul's minions?" Micah inquired, his gaze blank as ever. A flicker of hope lit up in the young man's eyes, but it was quickly overshadowed by a sense of apprehension. I can't abandon my family, sir," he admitted, his voice tinged with reluctance. Micah's expression softened momentarily before returning to its usual impassive state. "You can take your family with you out of this island, away from this torment. Not just your family, but all your people as well." He offered his tone firm, yet reassuring. "But I have a few tasks I need you to help me with in exchange, nothing difficult or complicated. If you agree to them, you and your family won't have to endure another lash for the rest of your lives, he promised, extending a lifeline of hope to the beleaguered islander. Chapter 86, Sweet Revenge 86. As the last of the young native's family disappeared through the shimmering portal, vanishing into the heart of New York City, a sly smirk crept across Micah's face. It was a rare expression, one that hadn't graced his features since he awakened his formidable bloodline a year ago. He had orchestrated this moment meticulously, deliberately leaving the portal open while the young man fetched his family. Micah's aim was simple: to attract as much attention as possible in New York City. The peculiar portal would draw a crowd, turning heads and sparking curiosity, creating a spectacle too grand to ignore. Micah's conditions for the young native were straightforward. Find people in blue uniforms as soon as he reached the other side and reveal everything, every tragedy, every injustice inflicted upon his people by Ra's al Ghul and his minions. And it had to be done loudly, ensuring that everyone gathered around the portal would hear, thus exposing Ra's al Ghul's atrocities to the world. With a flick of his wrist, Micah handed the young native a slip of paper containing the coordinates of Infinity Island. It was a lifeline, a means for the authorities to locate and rescue the remaining natives trapped in servitude. Naturally, Micah could have sent the entirety of the native population through the portal, but what good would that do? At the end of the day, it would be the words of these people against Ra's al Ghul, and he couldn't have that. No, Micah needed the entire world to see Infinity Island, and the conditions these natives had lived in for several centuries now, so that they would understand what cruel and insidious methods Raz used to maintain his reign over the island. Observing the bustling activity around the other side of the spatial rift, Micah's smirk widened. This was just the beginning, a calculated move in his game to dismantle Ra's al Ghul's legacy, and dragging him into the light was simply the beginning. Content with the sizable crowd that had gathered around the portal, Micah shifted his focus to the twin volcanoes towering overhead. With a mere thought, he teleported himself directly into their heart. In an instant, he found himself within a vast stone chamber hidden beneath the volcanic peaks. The chamber held an eerie ambience, its sole distinguishing feature a pool of crimson liquid, a Lazarus pit, unique in its crimson hue, the very reason Ra's al Ghul had coveted Infinity Island and seized control of it. Micah wasted no time. He intended to drain the pit then and there. Kneeling beside the edge of the Lazarus pit, Micah immersed his hand in the scarlet liquid. An unsettling sensation of rejuvenation coursed through him, accompanied by faint whispers that prodded at the edges of his mind, urging him toward unspeakable deeds. No wonder Raz is such a psychopath, Micah muttered under his breath, withdrawing some of the liquid into his shadow storage. Standing up, he shook his head, a troubled expression clouding his features. As anticipated, this isn't anything good. With resolve, Micah activated his powers, conjuring a portal at the pit's base. In a swift motion, he drained the mystical red fluid, diverting it into the depths of space. As the pit lay emptied, spears of light materialized around Micah, their radiance collapsing the underground chamber as they crashed into the walls. With his task accomplished, Micah teleported high above the island, retrieving his phone and dialing Arnold Wesker's number. "Hello? Yes, it's been some time. No, I don't plan to assume control. You're managing admirably." Micah's voice carried a hint of exasperation as Wesker bombarded him with inquiries. "Before anything else, I need a favor." "Yes, organize a press conference for me tomorrow. Just announce it's for the company's sole owner. It should garner some attention," Micah instructed, listening as Wesker agreed to handle the arrangements. "All right then, I'll leave it in your capable hands. Inform me of the details once they're set." "Okay." "Until then," Micah concluded, ending the call. Turning his gaze skyward, a mischievous grin played across his lips. Next stop, the Justice League's watchtower. The Justice League's satellite watchtower glided silently through Earth's orbit, its unseen presence a guardian against extraterrestrial threats. While the common folk and many high-ranking officials remained oblivious to its existence, it stood as a beacon of peace. As long as it remained operational, Earth remained shielded from harm. Such were the noble intentions behind its construction. Today, it was Hal Jordan's turn to command the monitoring room, tasked with ensuring no threats slipped past the vigilant eyes of the Justice League. Amidst the hum of technology, Hal surveyed the multitude of monitors before him, anticipating another uneventful shift. However, the tranquil atmosphere shattered abruptly as alarms blared and crimson lights bathed the room in an ominous glow. Warning: sensors have detected destabilization in space, potential intruders incoming via teleportation, announced the satellite's AI. Hal's expression twisted with concern at the unexpected alert. The satellite boasted space anchors crafted by the guardians of the universe themselves, rendering all forms of teleportation futile, including the advanced technology of the new gods. The breach of such formidable defenses raised immediate alarm. Who could bypass such advanced technology? Before Hal could fully comprehend the situation, a gust of salty air caught his attention, prompting him to whirl around. There, a dimensional rift materialized, revealing a solitary island amidst the ocean's expanse, its twin volcanoes looming ominously. In a heartbeat, a lone figure emerged from the rift, hurtling towards the satellite with a determined purpose. Reacting swiftly, Hal extended his fist, wreathing the portal in emerald light, attempting to obliterate it before the intruder could breach the sanctity of the satellite. Though his efforts fell short of destroying the portal outright, he succeeded in containing it within an energy barrier. Yet, as the young man closed in on the rift, he delivered a powerful blow, shattering Hal's barrier effortlessly and passing through the portal unimpeded. Hal's disbelief quickly gave way to readiness as he prepared for confrontation. "Who are you, and what brings you here?" he demanded, his gaze fixed on the intruder amidst the flashing lights, his features obscured. With a dismissive gesture, the young man, Micah, dispelled the portal, halting the alarms and allowing Hal to get a clear view of his features. "Relax, I'm not here to cause trouble. It's been less than 2 years since we met," Micah spoke calmly. "Or have you forgotten about me already?" he added, Radigan, his rodent companion, peeking out from behind Micah's shoulder and greeting Hal with a wave of his paws. Hal Jordan's eyes widened with recognition as Micah appeared before him. "You? How?" he stammered, his mind struggling to process the unexpected encounter. Yet he quickly recalled the discussions he'd had with Batman and Aquaman about this enigmatic figure, prompting him to abandon further questions. Instead, he let out a resigned sigh. "What's on your mind, kid?" he inquired, his voice laced with resignation. Micah's response was laced with a hint of amusement as he produced a small container from his shadow storage, filled with a mysterious red liquid. "Just need a tiny favor," he said, tossing the container to Hal with a casual flick of his wrist. "I need you to help me find all signals that match this liquid on the planet with your ring scanner." Catching it, Hal inspected the contents, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What exactly am I looking at?" he queried, shooting a curious glance at Micah. "It's a sample from a Lazarus pit. Ra's al Ghul's essence, you could say," Micah explained, his tone relaxed as he leaned against a nearby console. "Consult Batman if you need details, but the gist is I want to ruin Raz's day and destroy every Lazarus pit on the planet," he elaborated, his words carrying a touch of mischief. Hal gave Micah a contemplative stare before utilizing his power ring to scan the red liquid in the container. "This substance possesses remarkable rejuvenating properties, but its effects on the psyche," he remarked, a furrow forming on his brow as he analyzed the results. "All right, I'm not sure what your grudge is against Ra's al Ghul, but if you're aiming to rid Earth of this hazardous substance, then I'll gladly help," he declared, extending his ring-bearing hand towards the view of Earth visible through the observation room's window. Chapter 87, The Right Way to Ruin a Supervillain's Day 87. Micah let out a weary sigh as he scrutinized the 2 maps laid out before him. One was a flickering hologram projected from a spherical device, while the other was a seemingly hand-drawn map on an ancient piece of parchment. Both maps were adorned with markers representing Lazarus pits. The hologram showed beeping red dots, while the parchment had dark wreathing stains. However, nearly all of these markers were crossed out, save for one in the center. Predictably, relying solely on science couldn't uncover all the Lazarus pits, Micah muttered to himself, his gaze shifting between the two maps. Thankfully, I know someone who's adept in the mystical arts, he added with a wry chuckle, noting the disparities in the markers. After enlisting Hal Jordan's assistance to scan the Earth using his power ring and obtain a comprehensive map pinpointing every known Lazarus pit, Micah made his way to the Teen Titans Tower. There, he sought out Raven and made a similar request, harnessing her magical abilities to locate any hidden Lazarus pits. Upon comparing the results from both sources, Micah identified several locations that Hal's power ring couldn't detect, and others that eluded Raven's magic. Fortunately, he had anticipated such limitations, employing a combination of technology and magic to cover all possible avenues. Over the next 12 hours, Micah teleported across the globe, systematically dismantling every Lazarus pit he encountered, except for one. Micah harbored no intention of sparing even a single Lazarus pit on Earth, driven by a fervent desire to sever all lifelines connecting Ra's al Ghul to his twisted legacy. The incessant pursuit by the Demon Head's minions had denied Micah even a moment of respite for an entire year, fueling his determination to settle the score once and for all. Yet the prospect of simply obliterating every Lazarus pit seemed mundane to Micah, hardly enough to quench his thirst for retribution. He envisioned a grander scheme, one that would exact a fitting price for the relentless harassment he endured. However, that plan would have to wait for another day. For now, he needed to recharge and prepare himself for the upcoming press conference. Gorilla Grodd and Ra's al Ghul, just you wait, you sons of bitches, Micah muttered under his breath. I'll definitely make you pay for all the annoyance you caused me. Putting away the maps, Micah headed toward the exit, already looking forward to the day he'd settle these scores. As Micah stepped into the room, a flurry of camera flashes assaulted his senses, causing him to squint against the brightness. The relentless barrage continued with a flood of questions from the eager reporters, leaving Micah little space to process, let alone answer them all. Mr. Foster, is this your first public appearance? Are you about to unveil a breakthrough medicine surpassing even the cancer cure? Mr. Foster, rumors are swirling that you're from a parallel universe. Can you confirm? Did knowledge from your world contribute to your success? The questions bombarded Micah from all sides, overwhelming him. Yet, he maintained his poise, lifting his hands in a calming gesture to quell the clamor. I'll do my best to address your inquiries, but first, allow me a moment to speak, Micah interjected, his commanding presence demanding attention as he approached the podium. Today, I've convened you all not to discuss something as trivial as business or prompting some product, but to address a pressing concern, he announced, eliciting puzzled murmurs from the crowd. I'm here to shed light on the recent events that unfolded in our city just yesterday, he continued, his tone solemn. An impatient reporter couldn't resist interjecting. You mean the sudden appearance of the islanders in the heart of the city? Micah nodded gravely. Very much so. What you may not know is that I played a role in rescuing these people during my travels, he revealed, his words carrying weight. I may not fit the mold of a hero, but I'm not your average civilian either, Micah added, his hand gesturing to conjure a shadowy tornado within his palm, a subtle display of his otherworldly abilities before dispersing it with a flick of his fingers. Not that it matters anyway, he added with a chuckle. Micah's voice cut through the buzzing of the room, commanding attention amidst the sea of flashing cameras and eager reporters. What matters here are the heinous crimes committed on Infinity Island and the mastermind behind generations of oppression, Ra's al Ghul, he stated firmly, his expression grave. It's hard to wrap your head around, but Ra's is indeed an immortal, living for who knows how long. He's the one who invaded Infinity Island in the 17th century and oppressed its natives until just recently, Micah explained, his tone weighted with the weight of truth. I've seen firsthand the cruelty and hardship these people endured under Ra's al Ghul's rule, he continued, his voice tinged with anger. Just the thought that the world turned a blind eye to this injustice for so long? It sickens me to the core, he admitted, his frustration evident as he slammed his hand on the podium, causing it to crack. Sorry for the outburst, but what I witnessed was truly horrific, Micah apologized, his tone softer but no less resolute. I spoke with one of the islanders. He told me they lived under one rule: obedience meant a few lashes, but disobedience led to death by flogging. Can you even imagine the suffering they endured? He asked, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the reporters. A murmur of skepticism rippled through the crowd as the reporter voiced his doubts, questioning the validity of Micah's claims. Infinity Island is so remote that it's not hard to believe such crimes could go unnoticed there. But an immortal mastermind leading a secretive organization of assassins responsible for all this? The reporter questioned, his tone skeptical. I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but these natives seem extremely primitive and technologically isolated. Isn't it possible someone is manipulating them to instill fear and obedience? He pressed further. Micah nodded, acknowledging the reporter's astute observations. You raise valid points. I, too, harbored doubts when I first heard of this so-called immortal demon head. However, I assure you, it's all too real, he responded calmly, his confidence unwavering. I've conducted my own investigations into these matters, but you don't have to take my word for it. The rescue team sent to retrieve the remaining islanders will return soon with evidence to support my claims, he assured, his voice steady and assured. And with the assistance of the Justice League, I've spent the past day traveling the world, dismantling Ra's al Ghul's organization, Micah continued, his tone resolute. I've shut down over 73 of their bases, leaving only one remaining, he concluded, his words punctuated by a sense of determination. A skeptical reporter raised an eyebrow, challenging Micah's claim. 73 bases? I don't mean to doubt your abilities, but even if you had the power, dismantling an organization of such magnitude in just one day seems highly improbable, doesn't it? He queried, his skepticism palpable. Suddenly, before the eyes of everyone present, Micah vanished from the podium, replaced by the very reporter who had just spoken. Gasps of surprise rippled through the room as all eyes turned to the spot where the reporter had stood, only to find Micah there. With a snap of his fingers, Micah switched places with the reporter once more and returned to the podium. Like I said, I'm not your average civilian, Micah declared, a hint of amusement dancing in his eyes. Another reporter, less impressed by Micah's display, cut through the tension with a direct question. Then, why have you gathered us here? Is it merely to take credit for saving these people and enhance your company's reputation? He inquired, his gaze fixed firmly on Micah. Micah chuckled softly, unperturbed by the insinuation. I have more money and fame than I know what to do with, he replied, shaking his head. I didn't convene this gathering for such trivial reasons. Instead, I have an announcement to make, he stated, his tone serious. Despite my best efforts, I have yet to locate Ra's al Ghul, despite significantly dismantling his organization, Micah explained, his voice carrying a note of frustration. While I may have a trick or two up my sleeve, some tasks prove beyond my abilities. Therefore, I turn to the common man for assistance, he continued. I hereby declare that anyone who provides intel leading to the capture of Ra's al Ghul will receive a reward of $5 million American from my own pocket, he declared. And for anyone who manages to capture Ra's al Ghul and deliver him to the authorities, a reward of $50 million American awaits, he added, his voice resolute. I don't care who they are or where they come from. As long as someone can aid in capturing the villain Ra's al Ghul, I will generously reward them in any way, shape, or form they wish. Micah concluded his words, echoing with determination. Chapter 88, I know that I know. 88. Sitting behind his expansive desk within the LexCorp building, Lex Luthor observed the colossal screen in his office with a subtle smirk playing on his lips. As Micah concluded his announcement on the screen, offering a bounty on Ra's al Ghul, and revealing his plan to dismantle the last remaining base in a month's time, Luthor switched off the display just as Micah began fielding questions from the reporters. Rubbing his chin in contemplation, Lex delved into his thoughts, pondering the implications of Micah's bold declarations. However, his moment of reflection was swiftly interrupted by Mercy Graves, his loyal aide. Offering a bounty on the demon head isn't a terrible idea, but announcing his intention to attack Roz's last stronghold. That's risky business, she remarked, her expression one of disapproval as she shook her head. He'll be walking straight into an ambush, and it won't be just Roz Al Ghul and his cronies waiting there, she cautioned. Lex couldn't suppress a grin at Mercy's analysis. I'm willing to wager that little detail didn't escape him. In fact, I have a feeling he's banking on it, he remarked with a chuckle, his eyes gleaming with intrigue. As I suspected. This young man, he's quite the fascinating individual, he concluded, his interest thoroughly piqued. Mercy Graves furrowed her brow, her skepticism evident. What do you mean? She asked, her confusion palpable. A knowing smile crept across Lex Luthor's face in response. Roz and Gorilla Grodd have been relentlessly pursuing this Micah character for over a year now, despite facing significant setbacks. Do you really think they're the type to keep at it without some external motivation? He mused, his voice trailing off slightly. No, someone has been goading them. I'm just curious if they'll reveal themselves when their pawns are threatened, he explained, his words laden with intrigue. What? Mercy exclaimed, her surprise evident. Are you suggesting that this kid somehow knew about the puppet master manipulating Gorilla Grodd and Roz Al Ghul, and he's planning to use this situation to draw them out? She queried, her astonishment growing. Lex Luthor shrugged nonchalantly. Who's to say? At the end of the day, this is just theorizing on my part, he replied, raising an eyebrow at Mercy's reaction once he noticed her curiosity. As for the orchestrator behind Gorilla Grodd and Roz Al Ghul, well, I'm not entirely certain who he is and what he'll either, he continued, dismissing the topic with a wave of his hand. But I do have some suspicions. As Vandal Savage listened to the older man's report behind him, he stood stoically at the edge of the rooftop, gazing down at the bustling city of Metropolis below. The older man, ever loyal, probed for Savage's intentions. Do you wish to take action, Ancestor? The older man queried, noting Savage's lack of immediate response. The secret society has suffered significant losses, with many of the demon head's assassins neutralized or eliminated, he continued. Moreover, coerced members are beginning to question the leadership, especially in light of Micah Foster's disruptive actions. If we do not intervene, I fear that. But before the older man could finish his thought, Vandal Savage cut in with a disdainful snort. That these third-rate villains would dare to rebel? That the secret society would crumble? He retorted, his tone dripping with derision. Such an outcome is already inevitable, but it no longer matters. I have already set in motion arrangements for my grand plan. The fate of these insignificant beings is of no concern to me. They've already served their purpose as decoys to divert attention, he asserted, turning to face the older man. And as for Gorilla Grodd and Roz Al Ghul, those two fools have been eagerly toiling only to unwittingly serve another's agenda, Savage added, a faint smile playing on his lips. I am eager to witness what miserable end awaits them and the identity of the one pulling their strings. He concluded, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Stepping into the reception hall of the Royal Palace in Kahndaq, Micah couldn't hide his surprise at its stark simplicity. Despite the imposing facade of the palace, its interior lacked the expected opulence and grandeur. Black Adam, observing Micah's reaction, cleared his throat with a hint of amusement. Are you disappointed by the modesty of my palace? He quipped, his tone tinged with subtle pride. Micah's response was a casual shrug, his curiosity piqued. This place was once a marvel of extravagance, adorned with treasures from every corner of the world, Black Adam explained, rising from his seat with a dignified air. But when I assumed leadership of this nation, I saw fit to strip away the unnecessary luxuries, he continued, his gaze sweeping across the hall, lingering on the vacant space where a magnificent painting once hung. Every painting, sculpture, and artifact was sold off. If not for the need to keep a certain level of appearance, I would have had this very palace stripped down and sold off down to every stone of its foundation. He added a faint trace of nostalgia in his voice. Micah couldn't help but smirk at the revelation. Sealing you away was undoubtedly the wizard's greatest mistake, he remarked, a note of exasperation in his voice. It's rather ironic, isn't it, The immortal sage making such a monumental misjudgment, he mused, shaking his head in disbelief. Naturally, Micah didn't need Black Adam to elaborate on his reasons for selling off the palace's artifacts. Tgtheggood's unwavering dedication to his homeland, Kahndaq, was a well-known facet of his character, as clear as his infamous temper and deep-seated animosity toward the wizard. Micah was willing to bet his entire fortune that every penny from those sales found its way into Kahndaq's coffers, aiding in the country's reconstruction. Black Adam couldn't hide the widening of his eyes at Micah's astute observation. He hadn't expected Micah to broach the topic of the wizard of all people in his presence. If Micah's knowledge of the wizard's existence hadn't been surprising enough, his familiarity with events spanning many centuries ago would certainly catch Black Adam off guard. Nevertheless, he quickly composed himself. The wizard will face his reckoning soon enough, but that's beside the point, Black Adam retorted, a hint of disdain lacing his words. What brings you here now? It hasn't been long since our last encounter, he added, folding his arms across his chest. Micah smiled at Black Adam's inquiry. To fulfill my promise, of course, he stated plainly. With your permission, I'll bring my people here today to begin establishing a branch of our company, he explained further. We should be able to commence production and sales of medicine within the week. However, I'll need your assistance in arranging suitable locations for factories, the branch building, and securing the necessary materials for our operations. Black Adam regarded Micah with a mixture of contemplation and reservation. I refrained from questioning you on the island, given the circumstances, but now I must inquire, he began, his tone carrying a hint of warning. Do you understand the precarious situation of my country, the ramifications of defying the diplomatic and economic isolation imposed upon us? He asked pointedly, fixing his sharp gaze on Micah. I'm well aware, but so what? Micah replied with a nonchalant shrug. This new branch of my company could simply operate under a different name. With some legal and financial maneuvering, it'll appear entirely independent from the main company. And if anyone asks me about it, I'll simply deny, he added, a chuckle punctuating his words. That's certainly a plan, but it's hardly foolproof, Black Adam remarked, his brow furrowing with concern. Are you truly willing to take such a risk? It could jeopardize everything you've worked so diligently to build, he cautioned. Micah let out a weary sigh, shaking his head in response. What does it all amount to anyway? Such meaningless things. I no longer have any attachment to them, he replied with a hint of resignation. Maybe I would have been more reluctant to let go of something I've worked so hard to build in the past, but at this moment, I couldn't care less. I've already accomplished everything I set out to do here, and I'll soon be departing from this earth, he concluded cryptically. Leaving the earth, you don't mean? Black Adam interjected, his confusion evident. I don't mean it figuratively or metaphorically. Rather, I'll be literally leaving this planet, Micah clarified with a chuckle. I'm already bored of this place. I have a score to settle with someone, and maybe I'll find something to occupy myself with out there when I'm done, he added, his gaze drifting upwards as if peering through the ceiling into the vast expanse of space with an air of indifference. Black Adam couldn't help but chuckle in response. You're certainly a strange man, he remarked, shaking his head in bemusement. But not everything may unfold as you anticipate, especially if you intend to fulfill your promise and tackle Ra's al Ghul's last stronghold, he cautioned, his tone weighted with meaning. Micah waved Black Adam's concern aside dismissively. You don't need to worry about that. No matter how I leave Earth, literally or metaphorically, it won't affect our agreement, he reassured with a wry smile. As for the idiots who want to ambush me, he trailed off, his amusement thinly veiled. Chapter 89, Nightmare 89. Nestled amidst the pristine expanse of the Greenland ice sheet, an unforgiving landscape untouched by human hands, lay Ra's al Ghul's clandestine stronghold, the final bastion housing his Lazarus pit. Guarded by the stark white peaks of two snow-capped mountains, the base remained concealed from prying eyes, a fortress shrouded in secrecy within the icy wilderness. Ra's al Ghul had summoned all remaining members of the League of Assassins to defend this pivotal location, a command that brought forth a majority of survivors to heed his call. Yet, conspicuous by their absence were the sensei of the League and Roz's immediate family, their notable non-appearance casting a shadow of uncertainty over the gathering. Amidst the vigilant patrols of Roz's loyal assassins, who tirelessly patrolled the perimeter of the base, tense anticipation hung heavy in the frigid air. They knew today would not pass without an unwelcome intrusion. And as if on cue, a rift tore open in the fabric of the heavens, a spatial tier that heralded the arrival of an unexpected guest. From within the shimmering tier, a young man materialized, clad in a casual black suit and accompanied by a regally attired rat perched upon his shoulder. Hovering above the base, he surveyed his surroundings with a measured gaze, a silent harbinger of imminent upheaval. As soon as the young man materialized, a storm of projectiles hurled towards him from within the confines of the base: arrows, crossbow bolts, bullets, and all manner of heavy projectiles. Without missing a beat, Micah raised his hand, conjuring a shadowy gate that enveloped the base, devouring all incoming projectiles. There was a brief pause before the projectiles reappeared, hurtling back toward their source. Explosions rocked the base, mingling with anguished screams. Unfazed by the chaos, Micah descended into the heart of the base, landing squarely in what appeared to be a training ground. No sooner had he touched down than a horde of assassins swarmed towards him, led by a man in a dark, tight-fitting bodysuit with short white hair. This man, David Kane, was the first to close the distance, swinging his katana sword with lethal intent at Micah's head. Micah met Kane's attack with an impassive gaze as shadows coalesced around him, morphing into tendrils that shot forth toward the white-haired assailant. But before the tendrils could reach their mark, the snow behind Micah began to shift, and a figure clad in a white camouflage suit emerged from the snowy cover, wielding a tanto aimed squarely at Micah's side. Walking amidst the swirling chaos of the base, Micah seized White Ghost without hesitation, his grip firm and unyielding. "White Ghost, isn't it?" Micah's voice was calm, almost conversational, as he stared into the assassin's eyes, the tendrils of darkness swirling around them both. As David Kane was sent hurtling away by the shadow tendrils, his katana shattering upon impact, White Ghost attempted a desperate maneuver, spitting out a lethal needle aimed at Micah's eyes. To his bewilderment, the needle vanished midair, only to reappear before him, driving into his eye with lethal precision. Micah cast White Ghost's body aside as it went limp in his hand, indifferent to his fate. The fray around Micah escalated as more figures closed in, some familiar faces, others merely pawns in a grander game. Yet, Micah stood undeterred, his focus unbroken amidst the onslaught. However, before he could enact his next move, a dull ache pulsed through his mind, a telepathic assault testing his mental fortitude. Amidst the clamor, a primal roar reverberated through the base as Gorilla Grodd emerged, a hulking figure charging towards Micah, pounding his chest in a display of dominance. Micah's lips curled into a wry smile at the sight. So, the dumb gorilla fancies himself a telepath. His tone was laced with amusement as he addressed Ratigan, perched upon his shoulder. "He's all yours, Rat. Go as wild as you'd like." With a series of excited squeaks, Ratigan leaped from Micah's shoulder, a sinister smirk playing across his features as he darted towards Gorilla Grodd, eager to engage him head-on. Gorilla Grodd's scowl deepened, his pride stung by the audacity of a mere rodent standing against him. With a thunderous beat on his chest and a primal roar, he unleashed waves of telepathic energy toward the rat, seeking to crush its fragile psyche. Yet, to his astonishment, the rat's body erupted in a sudden explosion, catching even Grodd off guard. He didn't dwell on it, his psychic might knew no limits, forever evolving. Grodd then swiftly dispatched the rat's owner, a young man named Micah, and reaped great rewards for his triumph. The thought amused him. He had merely feigned the development of space-anchoring devices and expended minimal effort to eliminate a mere human, yet he received a device capable of tripling his mental powers. Unlike Raz Al Ghul, who suffered significant losses, Grodd's cunning manipulation had granted him immense power with minimum effort. Acknowledged by all villains in the secret society, Grodd's prowess commanded respect, but for the ambitious ape, it was insufficient. His exploits continued as he triumphed over the Flash, his long-standing adversary, and even confronted the Justice League, vanquishing the heroes in a battle that shook the entire world. Satisfied with his conquests on Earth, Gorilla Grodd turned his gaze to the stars, his mind ablaze with visions of dominion over the entire universe. But before he could embark on his cosmic ambitions, there was one final, crucial task he had to fulfill. Returning to the majestic confines of Gorilla City, Grodd sought out Saliva, the intelligent and enchanting female gorilla who had captured his heart long ago. Once, he had resorted to using a nefarious device to manipulate his pheromones, ensuring her affection. But when the device met its demise, so did their bond. Now, standing before her as a conquering hero, he offered his heart once more, proposing marriage with a newfound sincerity. To his elation, Saliva accepted without hesitation, her eyes sparkling with a mix of joy and relief. Together, they embarked on a year-long journey of preparation, with the entire city buzzing with excitement at the prospect of their union. From selecting the perfect venue to crafting intricate decorations, every detail was meticulously attended to, ensuring that their wedding would be nothing short of spectacular. As the momentous day finally arrived, Gorilla City was transformed into a veritable paradise of celebration. The streets echoed with the jubilant sounds of music and laughter, as gorillas from far and wide gathered to witness the union of their beloved leader and his cherished mate. Amidst a breathtaking display of floral arrangements and radiant decorations, Grodd and Saliva stood before the gorilla priest, ready to exchange their vows in the cherished tradition of humanity. With trembling voices and hearts full of emotion, they pledged their eternal love and devotion to one another, their words ringing out like a beautiful symphony of affection and commitment. And then, as the gorilla priest posed the most crucial question of all, Gorilla Grodd's voice rang out with unwavering determination. "I do," he declared, his gaze locked with Saliva's, a silent promise etched in his eyes. With a warm smile, the priest bestowed his blessing upon the couple, granting them permission to seal their union with a kiss. Grodd eagerly moved forward, his heart pounding with anticipation, ready to embrace his beloved and begin their new life together. But before their lips could meet in a tender caress, tragedy struck with startling swiftness. The once serene atmosphere was shattered by the deafening crash of collapsing structures as a monstrous paw descended from the heavens, wrenching Saliva from Grodd's grasp and plunging the joyous occasion into chaos and despair. Gorilla Grodd's confusion instantly gave way to a raging fury, his primal instincts driving him to beat his chest ferociously as he leaped into the sky, ready to confront whoever dared to intrude upon his joyous occasion. After all, he was the mightiest being on Earth. How dare anyone assault his beloved? Such thoughts roared through Grodd's mind as he ascended, but what he beheld in the heavens above brought him to an abrupt halt, his heart gripped with horror. Before him loomed a colossal rat, its towering form casting a dark shadow over Gorilla City. In its grasp was Saliva, held aloft like a mere plaything. Grodd's eyes widened in disbelief as the rat met his gaze, a sinister glint in its eyes that sent shivers down his spine. Without warning, it cruelly dropped Saliva into its gaping maw, swallowing her whole before Grodd's horrified gaze. Enraged beyond measure, Grodd charged toward the monstrous creature, his fury fueling every stride. The rat, unperturbed by his advance, regarded him with an air of mocking amusement, emitting a series of chitters that sounded like twisted, vicious laughter. With a swift motion, it extended its massive paw toward Grodd, crushing him against the unforgiving earth with a force that left him gasping for breath, his very soul writhing in despair. As he lay there, battered and broken, Grodd's mind raced with unanswerable questions. How had it come to this? Why had fate dealt him such a cruel hand? And most hauntingly of all, where had this monstrous creature come from, and what dark purpose drove it to sow chaos and destruction in Gorilla City? With each passing moment, Grodd's vision began to dim, the weight of his despair threatening to consume him entirely as darkness closed in around him. Chapter 90, Ambush 90. Shifting my attention away from the horde of assassins swarming me, I turned to Gorilla Grodd and couldn't help but crack a smirk. There he was, the oversized, not-so-bright ape, flat on his back, eyes rolled back and foaming at the mouth. Meanwhile, Ratigan, the rat extraordinaire, lounged over his back, casually scratching his rear end like he owned the place. Sure, I could have handled Grodd myself, but where's the fun in that? Besides, it wouldn't have been enough payback for the year of annoyance he and Raz Al Ghul had inflicted on me. Raz only cared about his immortality and legacy, both of which I was about to smash to pieces. Now, this fortress of his housed his last remaining followers and the final Lazarus pit on Earth, both of which were about to meet their end. As for Grodd, well, he was too busy basking in his own strength and pride. So, I figured, why not let Ratigan have a bit of fun? And let me tell you, that cheeky rodent didn't disappoint. Not only did Ratigan make a monkey out of Grodd, but he also destroyed him on so many levels, leaving him in a state of absolute despair. As I surveyed the scene, a grin spread across my face, a familiar feeling I hadn't had in a while swelling in my chest. The scores with those two were about to be settled, leaving only the mastermind behind it all. And trust me, I had plans for the bastard too. Now, all I needed was for him to show himself. But until then, let the chaos reign. As I pondered these thoughts, a sudden shift in the atmosphere caught my attention, the very fabric of space trembling around the base. In an instant, a shimmering blue barrier materialized, encasing the entire area. My brow furrowed at the sight. Not this shit again, I grumbled, testing my powers against the barrier. To my surprise, they remained unaffected, turning my annoyance into disappointment. Seriously, after all this time, this is the best you've got? A talking gorilla, a bunch of foot soldiers, and a defective space anchor? I muttered to myself, casting a critical eye over the fallen assassins strewn across the ground, some unconscious, others not so lucky. Suddenly, a swift movement behind me jolted me into action, and I dodged just in time as a beam of yellow light streaked past, leaving a smoking crater where I had stood moments before. Tracking the source of the attack, I locked eyes with a man clad in a garish yellow and black suit, his mustache twirling in a villainous fashion. Sinestro. He regarded me with an almost disinterested air. This barrier doesn't nullify your powers, it confines them within this space, he explained matter-of-factly. Nowhere to run, I'm afraid, he added, his tone devoid of emotion. Arching an eyebrow, I attempted to teleport beyond the barrier's confines, only to find myself thwarted by its invisible walls. Impressive! Whoever crafted this knew they couldn't sever my connection to space. Instead, they opted to cage me in a small space isolated from the outer world. I remarked with a nod of acknowledgement. Glancing briefly at Gorilla Grodd, I couldn't help but scoff. Definitely not his handiwork. This level of sophistication is beyond a simple-minded ape, I muttered, shifting my attention back to Sinestro. All right, spill the beans. Who's behind this barrier? Who sent you to ambush me here? I demanded, my gaze narrowing with suspicion. If you tell me everything you know, maybe I won't have to rearrange your anatomy. Sinestro let out a disdainful snort at my words. You think too highly of yourself, human, he jeered, curling his ring-clad fingers into a fist, conjuring a gigantic hammer construct. You're about as humble as Hal Jordan, but I suppose it doesn't matter. Once I'm through with you, I'll swing by and squash Hal like a bug. His threat was about as subtle as a gigantic sledgehammer made of hard yellow light, which, coincidentally, was hurtling toward me. With a roll of my eyes, I leaped skyward, meeting the descending hammer with my bare knuckles. The collision shattered the construct, showering us in glittering fragments of yellow light. As I stood amidst the yellow haze, Sinestro's bravado still ringing in my ears, I couldn't help but chuckle to myself. The idea of him taking on Hal Jordan was like a stray dog picking a fight with a tiger. Did Sinestro genuinely think he stood a chance against the Green Lantern, or was he just posturing to boost his own ego? The way Sinestro carried himself, you'd think he had the universe in the palm of his hand. But what was fueling his confidence? Sinestro might be full of himself, but if anyone knew the extent of Hal Jordan's power, it was him. Yet here he was, acting like he was about to take down the Green Lantern single-handedly. It didn't add up. Before I could dwell on it further, Sinestro snapped me back to the present with a barrage of stereotypical villain lines. How dare you lose focus while fighting me? He bellowed, charging toward me with a shimmering barrier of yellow light. I rolled my eyes at his melodramatic interruption. What the hell do you amount to anyway? I retorted, effortlessly dodging his attack in midair. I wasn't even giving you my full attention in the first place. I gestured nonchalantly toward the ground, where my shadowy tendrils were making short work of Raz Al Ghul's lackeys, like swatting flies. Seinstro's face contorted with fury at my dismissive attitude. You dare mock me? He pointed a clenched fist at me, unleashing a searing beam of yellow energy. I sighed, raising my hand to shield myself. With a subtle flex of my fingers, I tapped into my connection with space as the light made contact, causing the fabric of reality to fracture around the beam with the sound of shattering glass. Sinistro's attack fizzled out harmlessly, dissipating into the ether. You're really leaning really hard into the cliched villain shtick, huh? I remarked, shaking my head in disbelief. Your reactions are so boring and predictable that I'm getting second-hand embarrassment. Seinstro's face flushed with anger, his crimson skin almost matching his rage, but I was done indulging him. Dealing with him had eaten up enough of my time, and I'd already showcased more than a glimpse of my abilities. It was time to wrap this up. All right, I think you've hogged the spotlight long enough, I remarked casually, my hand weaving through the air as I conjured a pulsating orb of purple spatial energy. Time for you to make your exit. With a swift motion, I layered my hand over the orb, twisting and manipulating the gravitational field around us. The force beneath Seinstro surged, doubling in intensity by God knows how many thousands of times, and he plummeted toward the ground like a lead weight. He shot me a venomous glare, clearly itching to spew some retort, but the increased gravity rendered him speechless. I met his gaze with a blank expression as a colossal hammer materialized above me, its golden light gleaming ominously. Allow me to demonstrate proper light control, I quipped, tapping into my mastery of light magic and directing the hammer's descent towards Seinstro's prone form. Just as the golden light hammer was about to descend upon Seinstro, 4 beams of yellow light materialized out of thin air, shattering the hammer into countless pieces. Before I could even process what was happening, the beams converged upon me, ensnaring me within a sphere of shimmering yellow energy. Raising a skeptical eyebrow, I found myself surrounded by 4 figures clad in attire reminiscent of Seinstro's signature style, while another alien knelt beside Seinstro, aiding him in rising to his feet. Well, looks like you've brought the whole entourage, I remarked drily, shooting a pointed glance at Seinstro. I can't decide whether to feel flattered or downright aggrieved. Chapter 91, The Rules of the Game 91. So, it's not just Raz Al Ghul and Grodd throwing a party, but even Seinstro and his minions crashing in, I mused, squinting at the shimmering yellow force field trapping me. Talk about gate crashers. The barrier crackled with energy, pulsating with an ominous glow that seemed to mock my attempts to break free. It wasn't just any force field, it was infused with a strange power, one that seemed intent on severing my connection to space. With an exasperated sigh, I reached out to give the barrier a taste of my spatial power. But surprise, it didn't budge. Instead, I felt a subtle pushback, like the universe itself saying, "Nuh-uh, not today." Since when did Seinstro and his gang start playing with the laws of space? Last I checked, they were more about flashy constructs and evil monologues than messing with the fundamental fabric of reality. This had to be the work of someone with serious ring-tinkering skills. And then it clicked. Seinstro's sudden bravado, his whole "I'll crush Hal Jordan" spiel, it wasn't just hot air. Somebody had juiced up his ring, probably promised to soup it up even more once he took care of me. Typical, always someone trying to one-up the cosmic party crasher. But hey, what's a little challenge without a few surprises thrown in? As I mulled over the possible culprits behind this whole rigmarole, my mind raced through a list of cosmic troublemakers. The guardians of the freakin' universe? Nah, I hadn't done anything to earn their ire, and they're more into the whole green energy thing anyway. Plus, if they wanted to take me down a peg, they'd send their shiny green lantern squad, not beef up Seinstro. Then there were the controllers, those other control-freak aliens obsessed with the emotional spectrum. But nah, they're too busy playing with their own little lantern clubs to bother with me. Could it be the new gods and their drama-filled antics over on Apocalypse? Unlikely. They're too busy trying to outgod each other to care about some dude stirring up trouble on Earth. I honestly couldn't even begin to guess who the hell wanted me dead so badly. Calm down and think what you did recently to earn such special treatment, I mused, ignoring the threats and mockery directed at me by Sinistro's goons. But then it hit me like a yellow light construct to the face. This wasn't about what I'd done, it was about what I hadn't done yet, or maybe about something that I have. That sneaky son of a mother box, always one step ahead, looking down on people from his throne, pretending to know it all. It was like a cosmic game of cat and mouse, and I was the mouse trying to outsmart the whole dang universe. The more I thought about it, the more it made sense. This whole shindig wasn't just about taking me out, it was about making me reveal my hand, one pesky wave after another. Like some cheap JRPG where the bad guys keep leveling up. Whoever was pulling the strings knew me better than I knew myself. They weren't just messing with my shadow, light, and space powers. They were playing me like a fiddle, tapping into the stuff I kept hidden even from everyone. And they had a serious grudge, either over something I had now or something I was gonna have in the future. Or maybe it was something I'd do in the future. Time travel makes my head hurt. Only 2 cosmic big shots fit the bill, and neither was the type you wanna mess with on a bad day. There's the presence, you know, the big God of the DC universe, who could zap me out of existence with a thought. And then there's the other guy, extremely as powerful and almost all-knowing, but far from the presence's level. Let's just say, neither of them would invite you over for a friendly game of poker. Well, maybe the presence would, but definitely not the other guy. Now that I knew who I was dealing with, taking care of him was as easy as luring him out. Otherwise, I'd never have the chance to settle the score, being able to travel through space, and time made him rather difficult to find after Alol. With a plan forming in my mind, I glanced around at Sinistro and his lackeys, who were puffing out their chests like they'd already won the cosmic lottery. Talk about overconfidence. I couldn't help but chuckle at their arrogance. "You idiots are in for a surprise," I muttered, my hand diving into the shadows and retrieving a syringe filled with a clear, weightless liquid. Without a second thought, I plunged the needle into my neck, and just like that, I became as transparent as a ghost, my body weightless as air. With a smirk aimed at Sinistro, I sauntered right through the energy barrier his minions had thrown up, leaving them gaping in shock. Now, you're probably wondering what the heck that liquid was. In simple terms, it's like a high-tech version of an invisibility potion, making me intangible and impervious to harm for a short while. It's the kind of thing you buy from the cosmic equivalent of a convenience store, handy for getting out of tight spots. Sure, I could have just bought the power to turn invisible, but where's the fun in that? I like to keep things interesting, keep myself on my toes. Besides, being too powerful is just plain boring. Gotta leave some room for a challenge, right? This whole second chance at life felt like one big game to me. But who wants to play a game that's too easy? So I set my own rules, made things interesting. But enough about that. Sinistro and his gang quickly recovered from their shock and started conjuring up energy constructs with their rings, gearing up for an attack. I raised a hand, palm forward. "All right, kiddos, playtime's over," I said, and just like that, their energy constructs vanished into thin air, along with their fancy lantern get-ups. What just happened? One of Sinistro's lackeys, a purple gecko-looking alien, stammered, his eyes widening in disbelief. I grinned, holding out my hand to reveal their power rings hovering above my palm. "If I can teleport myself and others, why not your rings?" I said, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "You know what they say, know yourself and your enemy and you'll never lose a fight. Or something like that," I added, waggling my fingers at them like they were a bunch of clueless rookies. "I'd suggest brushing up on The Art of War by Sun Tzu for you dimwits, but..." I paused, cracking the space around the power rings in my hand, watching them vanish into thin air. "Well, I never bothered with it myself, and it's not like you'll have the chance now," I added with a smirk, golden needles of light swirling around me. With a swiftness almost rivaling the speed of light, the needles zipped toward Sinistro and his lackeys, puncturing their foreheads and leaving them sprawled on the ground, their faces frozen in terror. Did they regret their choices? Were they scared witless? Honestly, I couldn't care less. "Anyone else?" I called out, scanning the ravaged base around me, bodies scattered like confetti, some playing dead, others truly lifeless. Silence answered, broken only by the crunch of footsteps on snow. I turned, a grin spreading across my face at the sight of a familiar figure emerging from the main building of the base, eyes blazing with fury. I turned toward the source of the footsteps and couldn't suppress the grin that crept onto my face. There he was, Ra's al Ghul, stepping out from the main building of the base, his eyes ablaze with unmistakable hatred. Clad in ancient green robes, complete with a cape boasting one of those ostentatious collars that screamed villain, he sported a black and white goatee that seemed to complement his sinister aura perfectly. Once a feared immortal and mastermind capable of toppling entire cities, he was now nothing more than a pawn in someone else's twisted game. His once formidable organization, the League of Assassins, now lay in ruins, its members scattered or 6 feet under. And Ra's himself? Well, his days were surely numbered. But even in the face of impending doom, he stared back at me with defiance, his gaze unwavering, devoid of any hint of fear or remorse. As I took in his defiant stance, a fleeting thought crossed my mind. Had he willingly participated in the charade, or was he coerced into it? I never really considered it before, but in the grand scheme of things, it hardly mattered. Chapter 92, Empowerment 92. Arching an eyebrow, I peered down at Ra's al Ghul, his green robes billowing in the chilly breeze. "You were just a pawn in someone else's game, weren't you?" I quipped, scratching my chin as if solving some great mystery. Ra's al Ghul let out a derisive snort. "What would I possibly gain by sacrificing my followers?" he retorted, his voice tinged with arrogance. "I only target those who pose a threat to me and my cause, but you never stopped to consider that, did you?" he countered, his gaze unwavering. I couldn't help but chuckle at his attempt to play the victim. "Oh, spare me the sob story," I replied, rolling my eyes. "You claim to have noble intentions, yet you've left a trail of bodies behind you longer than the Amazon River. Tell me, were they all just necessary sacrifices too?" I retorted, my arms folded across my chest. Ra's al Ghul remained steadfast, his resolve unshaken. "Their deaths served a purpose greater than themselves, a cause I've dedicated my life to," he asserted firmly. "I seek neither your pity nor your understanding, only that you be haunted by your thoughtless actions. Look at the death and destruction you've wrought and never forget it," he proclaimed, gesturing toward the snowy battlefield strewn with fallen bodies. I let out a weary sigh at Raz's words. How the mighty have fallen, but let's face it, I won't remember any of these folks. Heck, I doubt I'll even recall you by next week, I remarked with a casual shrug. "The world's a big place, Raz, with countless births and deaths every minute, so why should the lives of your lackeys matter in the grand scheme of things?" I shook my head, bemused. "You preach about the greater good and the necessity of sacrifices, yet you've coasted through centuries without batting an eye at your own sacrifices. You're nothing but a hypocrite," I continued, waving him off dismissively. "But hey, your hypocrisy is entertaining, I'll give you that. Let's see just how deep the rabbit hole goes," I added with a smirk, gesturing toward the building behind him, the heart of the base. Ra's al Ghul furrowed his brow, suspicion evident in his gaze. "What exactly are you planning?" he inquired. I offered no explanation, instead clenching my fist and manipulating the fabric of space around the building. With a ripple, the structure vanished, leaving behind only a massive crater where the Lazarus pit once resided. "You've been alive for so long that you've forgotten what it truly means to live. So I'll give you a taste of mortality, something you've tried to escape for centuries," I declared with a smirk. "I'm curious to see how you'll handle it. Will you spend your remaining years dodging the consequences of your actions, or will you take the easy way out?" It was a whim, I admit it, but I couldn't help but wonder, what would Ra's al Ghul do now? With the last Lazarus pit obliterated and his once mighty League of Assassins reduced to rubble, how would he face his new reality? Would he embrace mortality, live as a fugitive dodging his past, or seek redemption for his sins? The possibilities were endless, and I found myself genuinely intrigued by the outcome. Sure, Ra's al Ghul wasn't exactly worthy of pity. He'd spent centuries using and abusing others, leaving a trail of death and misery in his wake. But hey, everyone deserves a second chance, right? Even if it was just for my own amusement. Roz shot me a glare filled with pure hatred. "You demon," he hissed through clenched teeth. I couldn't help but chuckle at his choice of words. Coming from you, that's quite the compliment. After all, the natives of Infinity Island had only one name for you, demon. But I suppose that didn't faze you, I retorted, turning away from him. I look forward to seeing you struggle and squirm like the many mortals ruined by you. With a casual flick of my hand, I teleported Ra's al Ghul away. Judging by his reaction, he wasn't one to take the easy way out. No, despite his scheming and cowardice, he fancied himself a warrior, a man who would meet his end on his own terms, no matter how humiliating it might be. Turning to one of the corpses strewn across the snowy ground, I couldn't resist a smirk. "All right, enough playing possum. Get up," I commanded, and almost on cue, the lifeless form began to stir, morphing into a grotesque, towering figure. Parasite rose from the ground, his appearance as unsettling as ever. If I had to describe him, I'd say he looked like a misshapen lump of purple flesh, held together by some invisible force and patched up with scraps of white tape. It was a far cry from anything remotely human. Freakin' Parasite, and it had to be the flesh abomination version, I muttered silently to myself, eyeing him warily. Parasite regarded me with narrowed eyes, his gaze filled with suspicion. "You never let your guard down, even after victory," he muttered, his tone cautious. "You're a real paranoid one, huh?" A grin crept across my face at his observation. To the untrained eye, Parasite might seem like nothing more than a brutish thug, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Despite his grotesque appearance, he was far from stupid. With his power to absorb abilities through physical contact, he had to be cunning to ambush heavyweights like Superman and steal their powers while their guard was down. He'd resort to every trick in the book, playing dead, disguises, sneak attacks, you name it. But unfortunately for him, such tricks would never work against me. I shrugged nonchalantly at Parasite's menacing presence. "Dropping my guard? Not really an option, buddy," I replied, my tone matter of fact. It wasn't just bravado, I had the means to keep a constant watch over my surroundings. With my spatial awareness, I could sense every object within a certain radius, a skill that came in handy, especially in situations like this. I detected Parasite slinking onto the battlefield earlier, but I'd let him lay low for a while. It seemed he was content to bide his time and wait for the opportune moment. Took a bit of brain power to piece together why Sinistro got mixed up in this mess, but it's not rocket science to figure out what you're after, I continued, flashing him a grin. Parasite eyed me like I was his next meal, his twisted grin widening at my words. "You're after my powers, right?" I asked, cocking my head to the side. "That's right, I've been craving your powers. Watching you mop the floor with these losers got me salivating," he admitted, his excitement palpable. "I'm gonna pound you within an inch of your life and slurp you dry," he exclaimed, his hands morphing into menacing blades as waves of telepathic energy assaulted my mental defenses. Shape-shifting and telepathy, looks like he'd managed to snag Martian Manhunter's powers before coming for me, which explains a lot. Well, this just got a tad more complicated, I thought to myself, sizing up my opponent. Considering how much of Martian Manhunter's powers this guy managed to steal, this fight might just turn into a marathon of a battle, and I still had bigger fish to fry. My initial instinct was to just whisk him away to the other side of the Earth, but with the space anchoring barrier snugly wrapped around the base, that plan went out the window faster than a bird hitting a jet engine. If it were possible, I might have teleported Ra's al Ghul straight into the middle of New York, just to watch him squirm as he dodged arrest instead of dumping him in a nearby building. Alas, life's not always that convenient. Short of avoiding Parasite entirely, I had to face him head-on, employing tactics similar to those I'd use against his previous hosts. That was the beauty of his power. The absorption of abilities came with their vulnerabilities. So, for example, if he'd sucked up Sup's powers, he'd be as susceptible to kryptonite as the Man of Steel himself. In this case, it was fire that would be his Achilles heel since he'd ingested Martian Manhunter's abilities. Now, conjuring up some flames wouldn't be too much trouble, but the real challenge lay in how to effectively use them against Parasite. The guy had absorbed the powers of the Justice Leaguers so many times, he probably knew their weaknesses better than the original owners did. I guess there's only one way to deal with this guy without expending too much effort. It's a bit risky, but beggars can't be choosers, and it's also for the sake of science. My personal amusement and curiosity more like, but you get the idea. You have spent 15,000 points. Congratulations, you have obtained the empowerment skill. Chapter 93, Mastermind 93. With Parasite looming before him, hungering for his powers, Micah grinned mischievously. You want my powers, huh? Well, you're in luck, buddy, he said, his tone dripping with faux sincerity. I'll give you all the powers you desire and then some. Parasite's eyes widened with skepticism, but the allure of more power proved too tempting to resist. And what's the catch? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. Micah shrugged nonchalantly. No catch, my friend, just a gift from me to you. You just have to take my hand and eat to your twisted little heart's content, he replied, feigning innocence as he extended his hand toward Parasite. Parasite hesitated for a moment, eyeing Micah warily. But the promise of untold power proved too enticing, and he tentatively reached out, ready to absorb Micah's abilities. The young man before him was clearly scheming something, but at the end of the day, it didn't matter. As long as he can make physical contact with his target, then his powers would instantly activate, and he'd rob Micah of every single ability he had. You have purchased the Fire Magic skill. You have purchased the Icy Veins skill. You have purchased. Micah smirked as Parasite made contact, activating his empowerment skill with a mental command. A torrent of conflicting powers surged toward Parasite, overwhelming his senses and causing his form to convulse uncontrollably. You have empowered Para-East with the Fire Magic skill. You have empowered Para-East with the Icy Veins skill. You have empowered Parsate with. Fire magic clashed with ice control, darkness battled against light, and wind raged against thunder, all vying for supremacy. Parasite's body strained under the weight of these conflicting abilities, his form contorting and distorting with each new power he absorbed. You have purchased. You have empowered Parasite with. Parasite's expression shifted from anticipation to agony as the chaotic energy tore through him, unable to contain the sheer magnitude of the powers coursing through his veins. The powers flowing through his veins not only had conflicting elements, but Micah even meticulously made sure that their sources, the way they were used, and even their very nature would put them at odds with one another. If not for the system's protection, then even Micah would have suffered the same agony when he used two conflicting powers, such as shadow and light. Naturally, Micah knew that as well, and so he decided to give Parasite exactly what he wanted. Power, so much power that Parasite couldn't even begin to imagine it, let alone make it his own. With a deafening roar, Parasite's form collapsed inward, unable to withstand the onslaught of conflicting energies. In a blinding flash of light, he imploded, reduced to nothing more than a swirling vortex of conflicting energy before dissipating into the ether. Micah watched with satisfaction as the chaos unfolded before him, his plan having succeeded beyond his wildest expectations. Looks like he bit off more than he could chew, fitting that a greedy bastard like would choke on his own food and die someday. He chuckled to himself, brushing off his hands as he surveyed the aftermath of his clever ruse. With Parasite neutralized, Micah allowed himself a moment of respite, his shoulders relaxing as he surveyed the aftermath of the battle. "Anyone else?" he called out, his voice echoing through the desolate base. Yet there was nothing but silence in response. No lingering threats, no hidden ambushes, just the stillness of the aftermath. "Guess that's the end of the party? Kinda boring, but oh well," Micah muttered to himself, a hint of disappointment in his voice as he strolled toward the edge of the base. He approached the towering space anchoring barrier, his curiosity piqued by the intricate machinery that created it. As his fingers grazed the surface, ready to explore further, the world around him shifted in an instant. Suddenly, Micah found himself in a bizarre metallic chamber, its walls lined with unfamiliar instruments and devices. The room stretched out before him, vast and expansive, like something out of a sci-fi novel. Yet, before he could even begin to make sense of his surroundings, a mechanical tendril shot forth, piercing through the air with alarming speed. Micah's instincts kicked in, but it was too late. The tendril struck true, plunging into his abdomen with a sharp, searing pain. He gritted his teeth against the sensation, a low grunt escaping his lips as he stumbled backward, his hand instinctively reaching for the wound. Staring down at the tendril ensnaring him, Micah felt a mixture of disbelief and amusement wash over him. It had been a while since anything had managed to catch him off guard like this, since that debacle with Two-Face and his rocket launcher, to be precise. Well, looks like someone's been doing their homework, Micah mused, a wry chuckle escaping his lips as he examined the blood staining his hand. Such a clever little scheme. The tendril, now firmly attached to his abdomen, seemed to pulse with sinister energy, its metallic surface glinting in the dim light of the chamber, suppressing Micah's powers. It was a clever little scheme, he had to admit. Not only did the tendril possess the ability to suppress his powers, but its placement had been meticulously calculated. Positioned just inches from where he'd materialized, it left him with no chance to evade or counterattack, effectively nullifying his spatial awareness. The ambush had been orchestrated with precision, exploiting Micah's vulnerabilities and catching him off guard in the blink of an eye. Whoever was behind this wasn't just some amateur, they were a strategist, someone who understood the intricacies of his abilities and how to exploit them to their advantage. In response to Micah's musings, the metallic chamber filled with the commanding voice of Metron. "It was your own hubris that allowed this clever scheme to ensnare you," the enigmatic figure pronounced. Micah pivoted to face the source, his eyes drawn to the portal materializing in the air. From its depths emerged a majestic throne, soaring through the chamber with an air of regality. Seated upon it was Metron, his presence exuding an aura of wisdom and foreknowledge. "You were aware of the trap, yet you permitted yourself to be lured into its clutches like a hapless pawn. Your arrogance surpasses even that of the god of evil and tyranny," Metron stated, his tone devoid of judgment or jest, each word carrying the weight of undeniable truth, a mere observation. Micah couldn't suppress a wry smile at the observation. "Ah, a classic, I knew that you knew that I knew scenario, eh?" he remarked, his amusement undiminished. "And here I thought I'd put on a perfect act of blissful ignorance." Metron's gaze remained unwavering, his countenance a mask of impartiality. "Your talent for deception and manipulation falters in the presence of those who comprehend it," he remarked plainly. "However, I find that one aspect of your abilities most intriguing. The way it affects people is rather profound." A hint of curiosity tinged Metron's voice, an insatiable thirst for knowledge seeping through his stoic demeanor. Micah arched an eyebrow in response to the revelation. "Intriguing, huh? So this is what it's all about," he pondered aloud, the realization dawning upon him. "You've somehow found out about my powers, and now you want to study them." His words carried a blend of speculation and certainty, echoing the gravity of the situation. Metron's countenance remained impassive as he delved into the heart of the matter. "It is not your powers themselves that captivate me, but rather their origin," he elucidated. "The convergence of chaos and infinitum, harmonizing to generate a wellspring of power that surpasses the records of an entire world. I am compelled to uncover its secrets." Micah stroked his chin thoughtfully, absorbing Metron's words with a nod of understanding. "You've always embodied neutrality and indifference, showing zero interest in anything besides your pursuit of knowledge," he remarked calmly. "In that light, your fascination with the anomaly that is my powers makes sense." Curiosity piqued, Micah couldn't help but pose the inevitable question. "But how did you come to learn about all this?" he inquired, earning a pointed gaze from Metron. Micah offered an exasperated roll of his eyes at the response. "Oh, come on. I'm already entangled in your intricate web, powerless to resist," he retorted. "Indulging my curiosity won't do any harm, will it?" After a brief moment of consideration, Metron relented with a nod. "Very well, I can appreciate a thirst for knowledge," he conceded. "I shall indulge you for now." Chapter 94, Madled 94. "Well, I'm waiting," Micah interjected impatiently, raising an eyebrow in anticipation. Metron, ever composed, embarked on his explanation. It may be challenging to accept, even for me, but I did not stumble upon the origin of your power through my own inquiries. Someone informed me." He trailed off, leaving a notable pause hanging in the air. "And that informant is none other than yourself," he declared matter-of-factly, his tone unwavering. Micah stared at Metron incredulously for a few beats, a bemused chuckle eventually escaping his lips. "So, not only are you almost omniscient and all-powerful, but you're a comedian too?" he quipped dismissively. "Though your comedic timing could use some work. Honestly, this joke of yours falls flat," he added, casting a contemptuous glance in Metron's direction. He certainly didn't recall ever divulging such information, nor did he have any gaps or discrepancies in his memory. His mental defenses were up and functioning, ruling out any possibility of brainwashing or psychic manipulation. So, the notion of him willingly sharing such details seemed preposterous. Sensing Micah's inner turmoil, Metron allowed a hint of amusement to creep into his expression, momentarily breaking his stoic facade. "There's no need for you to overanalyze it," he reassured, emphasizing the word you. "The version of you, the one standing before me, didn't disclose the source of your power to me or anyone else," he clarified, his tone cryptic. "It was another iteration of you, a future incarnation, to be precise, who willingly provided me with this insight." Micah couldn't help but stare at Metron with wide eyes for a few moments, his mind racing to comprehend the implications of what had just been revealed. He brought a hand to his temple, feeling the telltale signs of an impending headache creeping in. In a strange way, Metron's words did make some semblance of sense. Throughout his existence, Micah had been exceedingly cautious about divulging the true extent of his abilities. While it was widely known that he possessed extraordinary powers, including the potential to acquire even more, the notion that these abilities were derived from an omnipotent system capable of granting any wish or desire shouldn't have been so easily deduced. After all, Micah had been meticulous in guarding this particular secret. Yet, here he was, faced with the undeniable truth that someone, namely, a future version of himself, had chosen to reveal this closely guarded secret. The concept of time travel was inherently perplexing and headache-inducing, and Micah found himself grappling with the implications of this revelation. With Metron's ability to traverse both time and space, it stood to reason that such a disclosure from a future iteration of himself could have repercussions on his present, or past, self, depending on the chronology of events. Just the mere thought of it was enough to intensify Micah's headache. Time travel was indeed a troublesome subject, fraught with complexities and paradoxes that defied conventional logic. However, even as Micah struggled to come to terms with the situation, one question lingered in his mind. Why would his future self choose to divulge such a sensitive secret? Surely, his future self hadn't forgotten his comic book knowledge, nor had he overlooked the fact that Metron possessed the ability to traverse time and space. Was it a careless slip of the tongue, a casual taunt directed at a future version of Metron that had inadvertently led to this headache-inducing predicament? The possibility gnawed at Micah's thoughts, leaving him pondering the motivations behind his own future actions and even cursing his future self. After a futile attempt to rack his brain for an explanation, Micah threw his hands up in exasperation. "Why in the bloody hell would my future self do something so utterly stupid?" he vented, shooting a pointed glare at Metron, his frustration palpable. "Do you have any inkling?" he pressed, hoping for some insight. Metron's response was predictably unhelpful as he shook his head. "I'm afraid not. The motives of your future self are as perplexing as they come, and even you seem at a loss to decipher them," he admitted, his tone tinged with a hint of frustration. "He appeared before me one day, divulging everything. I attempted to apprehend and dissect the source of his powers, but he proved to be too formidable," Metron elaborated, his expression betraying a hint of frustration. "Yet you, his past counterpart, though powerful in your own right, pale in comparison. Thus, it became clear to me that you were the key to achieving my objective." Micah's features darkened instantly at Metron's explanation. "So let me get this straight. You got your ass handed to you by my future self, and your brilliant solution was to travel back in time, manipulate a bunch of idiots to ambush me, all the while thinking you could handle me with ease," he seethed, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. Metron's solemn nod only served to stoke the flames of Micah's fury to new heights. "Well, congratulations, you've successfully managed to piss me off. I'd intended to take things slow and play with you for a bit, but now—" He spat, his voice dripping with venom. Purple tendrils of energy began to crackle around him as his form underwent a dark transformation. "I'm going to kill you, and then I'll hunt down my future self and give him the thrashing of a lifetime once I'm through with you," he vowed, his skin taking on an obsidian hue, horns sprouting from his forehead, and a third eye, filled with swirling stars, opening between them. Micah extended his hand, conjuring a flickering rift that trembled on the brink of collapse. With Metron's technology suppressing Micah's powers, particularly his bloodline's connection to space, this was the best he could manage. However, the rift's stability mattered less than what lay within, a potent energy that instantly put Metron on edge. Metron's initial instinct was to teleport away, but he hesitated. He'd gone to great lengths to ensnare Micah, and fleeing now meant abandoning everything. "What? What are you attempting to do?" Metron demanded, his voice betraying a mixture of shock and apprehension. Micah's grin was predatory as he locked eyes with Metron. "Remember Parasite?" he queried, not bothering to wait for a response. "He died miserably after biting on more than he could ever chew. But you didn't think all those powers he swallowed went up in smoke, did you?" His tone was manic, eyes gleaming with a dangerous light. "There were a ton of conflicting powers that would never coexist. Where do you think they went when Parasite blew up into 1,000 pieces?" he taunted, the rift teetering on the brink of chaos as violent energy surged forth. "I had to seal everything in a pocket dimension, or an entire continent would have blown up to high heavens at the very least, but now I'll gift these powers to you." The fabric of space began to fracture under the rift's pressure. Alarm bells ringing out in the training facility as power systems malfunctioned. Suddenly, all power within the facility flickered and died, plunging the area into momentary darkness. When emergency lights flickered to life, the rift was already on the verge of collapse, ready to unleash all the energy contained within it. Finally grasping the gravity of the situation, Metron reluctantly conceded defeat. With a grimace, he activated the Mobius chair and summoned a portal, prepared to make a swift exit and avoid any further encounters with the unpredictable Micah. However, his portal dissipated before he could even step through it. Micah's grin stretched wider as he observed Metron's failed attempt. "Running won't do you any good now. With this much energy seeping out of the pocket dimension, even space itself is becoming unstable," he chortled, his voice strained as he fought to contain the unruly rift and prevent the explosive release of its contained power. "You've got two options. Try to fly away with that nifty chair of yours, or try to contain the rift," he offered. "But believe me when I say you'll never outrun this kind of shockwave, even if you had 10 more legs," he warned, easing his suppression of the pocket dimension slightly to underscore his point. Sensing the escalating surge of energy emanating from the rift, Metron clenched his jaw and propelled himself towards Micah, activating his Mobius chair to erect an energy barrier around the rift. You're utterly mad," he muttered through gritted teeth, straining to maintain the barrier against the mounting pressure. Chapter 95, Dirty Fireworks 95. Observing Metron's desperate struggle to contain the volatile pocket dimension, I couldn't contain my amusement. My grin stretched wider as I met his panicked gaze, his supposedly all-seeing eyes filled with dread. With a nonchalant shrug, I withdrew my hands from my pockets, a mischievous glint in my eyes. Metron's eyes widened in disbelief at my casual demeanor. "What on earth do you think you're doing? Have you completely lost your mind?" he demanded, his voice tinged with urgency. I maintained my grin, unfazed by his alarm. "Come on now, Metron, no need to get your circuits in a twist," I replied dismissively, my tone dripping with sarcasm. "And as for closing the portal, well, I'll pass. I leave this matter in your capable hands," I added with a smirk. "Pass, you fool, we need to close it now before it's too late," Metron urged, his voice tinged with desperation. "You'll perish alongside me if this rift collapses and unleashes its energy." I shot him a condescending look, rolling my eyes at his insistence. "Perish? Ha, hardly, I scoffed, my confidence unwavering. Unlike you, I'm far too powerful and good-looking for something so trivial to kill me, I boasted, rubbing my chin with the most obnoxious and smug expression a human could muster. Metron's frustration was palpable as he struggled to comprehend my audacity. This is no time for jests. With your powers being suppressed, you'll meet the same end as me when this pocket of space collapses, he exclaimed, his urgency growing with each passing moment. I shot Metron a look that clearly conveyed my disbelief. Are my powers really being suppressed? I questioned, watching as confusion clouded Metron's expression, unable to grasp the situation. With a resigned sigh, I motioned towards the base of the mechanical tendril, where Ratigan was busily gnawing away, his razor-sharp teeth making quick work of the device. Why don't you take a closer look? I suggested, a smirk playing on my lips as I observed Metron's growing horror at the scene unfolding before him. Metron's complexion turned ashen as I effortlessly removed the tendril from my abdomen, the wound it left closing up almost instantaneously. Remember when your ship lost power during the rift incident? I reminded him with a grin. Well, in that split second of chaos, I managed to summon my little friend here using a bit of space magic. And voila! I exclaimed, gesturing toward Ratigan, who had turned into a spectator, enjoying an amusing show. You deceived me, Metron exclaimed, his voice tinged with a mix of anger and frustration as he struggled to face me. I shook my head with a sigh, unable to contain my amusement. Your words imply I actively misled you, but as you so astutely pointed out earlier, it's not trickery if you willingly allowed it, I retorted, a satisfied smirk spreading across my face. In your case, it wasn't arrogance that led to your downfall, but sheer foolishness and short-sightedness. Quite ironic, isn't it? I remarked, giving him a patronizing pat on the shoulder for a job well done. Truly, I couldn't have done it without him. To be honest, I could have ended this whole debacle without breaking a sweat. When Metron's ship went dark, I could have teleported away from that pesky tendril and handed him a beatdown he wouldn't soon forget. But his jab about me being inferior to my future self, yeah, that got under my skin more than it should have. I mean, who even is this future me? Shouldn't I be glad to know I'm destined for greatness? Yet, his words still irked me. But aside from my little ego trip, I wanted to stick it to Metron for his arrogance. So, I cooked up a plan, one that's overly complicated and risky, just to humiliate him by beating him at his own mind games. And as for the whole space destabilization story I fed him, pure fiction. I shut down his escape routes using my bloodline's powers, plain and simple. Leaning on the backrest of Metron's Mobius chair, I pondered my next move. What's the best way to mess with you now? I wondered aloud, a mischievous glint in my eye. Should I go for the classic knife to the ribs, or maybe tickle you until you lose focus and get swallowed by that pocket dimension? I teased, my grin widening with each absurd suggestion. Or maybe I'll just leave you here to stew in your own panic until you run out of steam and turn into fireworks. I chuckled, thoroughly entertained by the options at my disposal. As I pondered my next move, brainstorming ways to make Metron's demise as humiliating and miserable as possible, I noticed a sudden change in his expression. His features contorted with rage, yet his voice remained eerily calm. I'll concede defeat, he began, his words laced with an ominous tone. But don't think for a moment that I'll let you toy with me to my demise. His voice trailed off, sending a shiver down my spine. Let us die together, mortal. Before I could even react, he dispelled the barrier around the portal with a furious gesture. In an instant, blinding light erupted from the unstable pocket dimension, its energy fluctuations sending a wave of dread coursing through me. And then, without warning, boom. Emerging from the pocket dimension, he hastily conjured to shield himself from the explosion's aftermath. Micah couldn't stifle a groan of pain. His gaze dropped to his lower body, and a surge of frustration coursed through him as he took in the sight of his scorched stumps where his left arm and leg once were. He clenched his teeth, fighting the urge to unleash his anger on something or someone, preferably Metron. Unfortunately, the knowledge-hungry new god was now dead. In truth, Micah could have created a pocket dimension and escaped the explosion relatively unscathed if he had been alone. However, he couldn't abandon Ratigan. Racing against the engulfing energy, he had managed to snatch Ratigan and whisk them both away just before the unstable energy could devour them. But even with his quick reflexes, he hadn't emerged unharmed. As if sensing Micah's frustration, Ratigan poked his head out of Micah's jacket and emitted a chitter that roughly translated to, "A small price to pay for saving my life." The rodent sounded remarkably self-assured, and Micah briefly entertained the idea of teleporting him into the core of the nearest sun. However, he dismissed the thought with a sigh, raising his left hand to palm his face, only to stop as he remembered that the said arm was now gone. Letting out a resigned sigh, Micah reached into his shadow storage with his good arm and retrieved a heavily decorated glass bottle brimming with shimmering red liquid. With a swift motion, he unscrewed the cap with his teeth and hastily downed the contents before tossing the empty vessel into the vast expanse of space. As the bottle drifted away, Micah braced himself for the intense sensation that followed, akin to thousands of ants skittering beneath his skin. It lasted for 5 agonizing minutes, during which his injuries, including his missing limbs, miraculously healed. 100 million gone, just like that, Micah muttered ruefully, his expression pained as he watched the empty bottle vanish into the void. The elixir he had consumed was a pricey purchase from the system's Daily Deals tab, even with its hefty 90% discount. It had cost him 10,000 points, equivalent to a staggering $100 million. Well, it's my own fault for pushing that bastard Metron too far. He's still a new god, after all, Micah grumbled, shaking his head in frustration. Despite Metron's pragmatic nature and his singular focus on accumulating knowledge, his pride as a new god was unmistakable. He wouldn't tolerate humiliation, especially when he had no means of escape. However, dwelling on what had transpired wouldn't change anything. Micah shifted his gaze to the now empty Mobius chair, its former occupant erased from existence. Chapter 96, Contract 96. Surveying the vacant Mobius chair, Micah's lips curled into a satisfied smile. The chair wasn't just a mere object, it was the spoils of his strategic prowess and the hurdles he had overcome. Its capabilities were nothing short of awe-inspiring. Time and space manipulation at a mere thought, sophisticated holographic projections for tactical advantage, and an impenetrable force field capable of containing even the most formidable foes. As much as I hate to admit it, this chair is worth all the trouble. Maybe this is what my future self wanted in the first place. Micah mused, his fingers tracing the intricate design of the chair's armrest. The thought of his future self-engineering such a convoluted plan to secure the chair wasn't lost on him. Yet, there lingered a nagging question: why involve Metron in the elaborate scheme? If future Micah was as powerful as Metron suggested, why not claim the chair directly? Fuck, just thinking about the chronology of events is giving me a headache. This is such a pain in the ass, Micah muttered, massaging his temples as he pondered the perplexities of temporal manipulation. The intricacies of cause and effect were enough to make anyone's head spin. In the first place, was he the original Micah? Was he the past Micah? Was he the present Micah? Is his future self also his past? Is it a loop or a straight line? None of these questions really mattered or had any relevance, and yet Micah couldn't help but sink into the rabbit hole, his headache intensifying with every stray thought. After a fruitless attempt to unravel the tangled web of his future self's intentions, Micah surrendered to the futility of the endeavor with a resigned exhale. Looks like I'll just have to have a chat with my future self and figure out what the hell he was thinking, he muttered, shaking his head at the convoluted mess before him. And with this thing at my disposal, tracking him down shouldn't be too hard, he added, giving the backrest of the Mobius chair an affirming pat. As his hand connected with the chair, a lifelike hologram materialized from within the armrest, revealing none other than Micah himself. However, this version appeared at least 2 decades older, clad in attire reminiscent of a sci-fi protagonist. Yet, it was the unmistakable smirk of smug mischief that set him apart. Greetings, my less evolved, inferior past self. May you live long and prosper. The hologram began, executing a Star Trek greeting that sent Micah's irritation levels skyrocketing. Without hesitation, Micah swung a fist at the hologram, only to watch it pass through without effect. The hologram grinned in response. "Just so you know, I won't feel a thing, it's a hologram," it taunted, relishing in Micah's futile gesture. "Fucking smug bastard. What's your game?" Micah snapped, his annoyance palpable. "And what the hell is," he added, scowling at his future self's calculated antics, only to be interrupted. "Ah, hold your horses, hotshot. This is a pre-recorded message, so save your colorful language for someone who cares," the hologram interrupted, its tone dripping with superiority. "In any case, let's cut to the chase. I've got some explanation to do, and you do well to listen." It continued as if the one who recorded the message knew exactly how Micah would react. "Now, you might be wondering why Metron of all people would show up at your doorstep and try to turn you into a guinea pig, and the answer is simple." The hologram began, adopting an air of grandiosity. "It's a prank, orchestrated by yours truly," it declared, spreading its arms wide in a theatrical gesture. "A bloody prank," Micah muttered incredulously, a vein throbbing on his forehead. "That's right, a bloody prank, nothing more and nothing less," the hologram replied, its grin growing smug. "You mean to tell me that you dragged me into all this chaos just for a laugh?" Micah snapped, his frustration palpable. The hologram nodded gleefully. "You see, after so many years, there's very little left for me to do in this world. I've already defeated every opponent worth defeating and accomplished everything there is to accomplish," it explained. "I'm planning to bid farewell to this world and find new fun elsewhere, but before I go, I wanted to pull off the ultimate prank on myself." It continued, its expression now filled with childlike excitement. Micah's eyebrows shot up in disbelief. "So, you concocted this entire scheme just to prank yourself?" he asked, struggling to wrap his head around the absurdity of the situation. The hologram's smirk widened. "Indeed, I squeezed my brain for many a night on how to execute such a prank, considering the obvious hurdle that one can't prank oneself since they're aware of their own plan," it explained, its smirk growing into a grin that threatened to split its face. "I thought about setting a plan into motion and then wiping a portion of my memory, or even creating a clone to deceive myself, but my keen senses and formidable psyche rendered such methods ineffective. That's when inspiration struck," it exclaimed, punctuating its words with a hearty laugh. "Instead of pranking myself, I'd prank a past version of myself, one with weaker senses, and here we are," the hologram stated grandly. "A prank that transcends time and space. Spectacular, isn't it?" it added. Micah couldn't help but palm his face for a moment before sighing. "Well, now that you put it this way, it does sound kinda cool," he admitted with a reluctant nod. The hologram's smile widened at those words. "As expected of you, or should I say me, I knew you'd come around," it said proudly. Micah gave the hologram a skeptical look. "Are you sure this is a pre-recorded message?" he asked, suspicion creeping into his tone. The hologram shrugged. "Yup, this is 100% a recorded message. I am, after all, you, so it's not hard for me to predict how you'd react," it replied confidently. Micah let out an annoyed groan. "Whatever, I guess," he muttered under his breath, trailing off at the end of his sentence. "Now spill it, other than this being a cosmic prank, what other purpose did you have?" he demanded. The hologram nodded in satisfaction. "As expected of me, I knew I'd notice," it said proudly, seemingly oblivious to Micah's annoyance. "Other than pulling this prank simply for the sake of it, there are 2 reasons," it stated, raising 2 fingers dramatically. "The first reason is the Mobius chair," it continued. Micah furrowed his brow at those words. "If you wanted the Mobius chair so badly, why didn't you just take it?" he questioned, scratching his head in confusion. "Metron himself said he was no match for you," he added. The hologram put on a sheepish expression. "It's not that I didn't have the power to beat up Metron and take the chair. It's just that I wasn't able to," it confessed. "You see, I made the mistake of messing with the one guy you shouldn't mess with in this world, and ended up signing the equivalent of a cosmic contract that restricts my actions," it explained, its tone tinged with regret. "The presence, huh?" Micah said with a judgmental look. "Why mess with that guy of all people?" he asked, his tone dripping with sarcasm and gloating. The hologram flashed a grin full of teeth. Well, you know who likes to go around playing bartender from time to time? It said, a chuckle escaping its lips. Well, I figured it'd be a bright idea to raid his drink cabin. As it turns out, it wasn't. It stated matter-of-factly. Micah looked at the hologram blankly for a moment, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Do I really have to turn into this idiot in the future? He muttered, quickly shaking away the stray thoughts after a brief pause. And, what kind of terms did this contract of yours have? He asked, his curiosity piqued. Chapter 97, The End 97. The hologram scratched its head sheepishly in response to Micah's inquiry, a flicker of embarrassment crossing its features. Well, it wasn't too terrible, it admitted, its tone slightly apologetic. The contract essentially forbids me from meddling with the fundamental forces of the universe, it clarified, its holographic form shimmering slightly with the weight of the revelation. Micah's brow furrowed with curiosity as he leaned in, his interest piqued. The fundamental forces? What does that entail? He asked, his voice tinged with genuine intrigue. The hologram gestured dismissively, its form flickering momentarily. You know, the big stuff, the sphere of the gods, the life force, collective unconsciousness, and so on, it explained, its holographic projection shifting to emphasize each point. The presence seemed worried that my tinkering could disrupt the entire multiverse like I'm some amateur. Can you believe it? It added, its holographic eyes narrowing with a hint of frustration, a subtle ripple of energy rippling through its projection. Micah's expression was one of genuine surprise, his eyes widening slightly. But why restrict access to those forces? Plenty of people use them. Even members of the Justice League harness them for their powers, he pointed out, a note of incredulity creeping into his voice. It's practically the backbone of their abilities. The hologram sighed, its form flickering momentarily as it seemed to ponder Micah's words. Well, it's not that I can't access them altogether. It's more about not going overboard, it clarified, its voice tinged with a touch of resignation. The presence warned me about the delicate balance of the universe and how meddling too much could upset it. Frankly, it's a bit too intricate to explain fully, and frankly, quite dull, it concluded, its holographic projection shimmering slightly as if expressing its disdain for the topic. Micah let out a weary sigh, his frustration evident in the slump of his shoulders. I'm not exactly thrilled about delving into the nitty-gritty of cosmic creation either, but, he paused, his voice trailing off as he struggled to articulate his thoughts. I get why the presence wouldn't want you messing with the 7 fundamental forces, but what does any of this have to do with Metron? Are you seriously telling me he's some kind of universal cornerstone? He scoffed, his skepticism clear in his tone. The hologram emitted a soft chuckle, its features illuminated with an impish gleam. Not exactly. Metron's more closely tied to the Sage Force, but that's hardly one of the universe's top-tier powers, and offing him wouldn't make a dent in the cosmic knowledge bank. It explained matter-of-factly. However, the presence considers Metron indispensable, a sort of cosmic historian and doomsday librarian. If you will, it elaborated, its holographic form shimmering with amusement. Micah's brows furrowed in contemplation as he absorbed the hologram's words, his gaze drifting to the now-vacant Mobius chair. So that's the deal? Hold on a second, he interjected, his expression shifting to one of suspicion as he fixed the hologram with a piercing stare. You spun all that spiel about pulling off some grand prank and handing me the Mobius chair, but this was all just a ploy to stick it to the presence, wasn't it? He accused, his annoyance palpable in his tone. The hologram maintained its smug grin, neither confirming nor denying Micah's accusation. Well, you see, I'm not exactly capable of going toe-to-toe with the presence, not in his own cosmic playground anyway. It admitted with a sly smirk. You, on the other hand, didn't make any promises to the old coot, and I certainly didn't twist Metron's arm to come after you, it continued, its grin widening mischievously. He dug his own grave with his greed, though I might have nudged him in that direction. So, technically speaking, I'm innocent as a lamb, wouldn't you say? It concluded, its holographic form practically oozing with amusement. Micah rolled his eyes in frustration. Typical, you won't even own up to it, he muttered irritably. But just because I have the chair now doesn't mean you'll get your hands on it too, he retorted, his gaze narrowing. Besides, who's to say that changing the past wouldn't create a new timeline instead of changing the future? He reasoned, his fingers absent-mindedly tracing his chin as he pondered the implications. Suddenly, realization dawned on Micah, and his irritation flared anew as he turned to glare at the hologram. "You conniving motherfucker! You wanted to see what effects changing the past would have too, didn't you? How many birds were you aiming to hit with one stone?" he demanded, his eyes narrowing dangerously. The hologram's grin only widened at Micah's accusation. "Ah, the mysteries of time and space. Quite the playground for the imaginative mind," it remarked cryptically. "But enough chit-chat. Our little tete-a-tete comes to an end now," it declared, its form dissipating into thin air before Micah could even retort. Just one last thing to ponder. Was this really a recorded message, or was it actually a live call? "Think on that until we meet again, my dear, inferior past self," it concluded, leaving Micah to stew in his thoughts and frustrations. Micah let out a low whistle, shaking his head as if trying to dislodge some pesky thought. "Damn," he muttered to himself, running his hand through his hair in frustration. "I've just realized something. I'm quite the obnoxious fellow, aren't I?" His gaze shifted to Ratigan, who remained perched atop his shoulder, observing him with a curious glint in his eyes. The rat emitted a series of chitters that, when translated, conveyed a message along the lines of, "Took you long enough to figure that out. Now you know how the rest of us feel." Micah couldn't help but roll his eyes at the rodent's cheekiness. "Oh, spare me your rodent wisdom, you cheeky little thing," he retorted with a smirk. "Anyway," Micah continued, shaking off the moment of introspection, "looks like I've got a new score to settle, with myself of all people." He paused, the absurdity of his own statement sinking in. "Well, isn't that just grand?" he mused, a wry grin playing on his lips. "Guess I'm the only one who can hold a grudge against myself, huh?" Shrugging off the weight of self-reflection, Micah moved to take a seat on the Mobius chair, a determined glint in his eye. "Ah, well. Old scores, new scores, I'll settle them all in due time," he declared with a shrug, dismissing the existential quandary with a nonchalant wave of his hand as he settled into the chair's comfortable embrace. In the year 2070, Bruce Wayne, now a distinguished elder with short, snow-white hair, leaned on his cane as he wandered the streets of Gotham. The city had transformed beyond recognition since his youth, a testament to both time's passage and human ingenuity. Once a cesspool of crime and despair, Gotham now stood as a beacon of progress and resilience. As Bruce strolled, he couldn't help but reflect on the city's evolution. Thanks to his efforts, along with the construction of a state-of-the-art mental institute in New York 15 years prior, Gotham had been cleansed of its criminal underbelly. No longer did gangs and villains hold sway over its streets. Yet, despite the city's newfound tranquility, Bruce felt a pang of nostalgia for his days as Gotham's Dark Crusader. Age and the weight of responsibility that should have been shouldered by a certain someone had forced him to retire the mantle, passing it on to his protege, Dick Grayson, the first Robin turned Nightwing. Dick's initial reluctance to assume the role had given Bruce pause, but after assurances of autonomy, he agreed to take up the mantle. Bruce trusted Dick implicitly and knew Gotham would be in capable hands under his watchful eye. Together, they formed a formidable duo, one working behind the scenes to apprehend criminals, while the other, operating in the light, focused on rehabilitating them. With the construction of a distant mental asylum where the criminals were reformed, away from the influences of Gotham's corruption, Bruce found himself making more positive changes in a month than he had in his entire lifetime. Of course, none of this would have been possible without the invaluable insights and intelligence provided by a certain informant, but that's a story for another time. Not all criminals could be redeemed, though. Some, like the Joker, remained steadfast in their pursuit of chaos, despite Bruce's attempts at intervention. Others, like Firefly and Dr. Pig, were too far gone, their minds irreparably damaged. For them, Bruce constructed a specialized facility, a place of eternal confinement where hope dared not tread. Yet amidst the darkness, there were glimmers of hope. Many criminals, once lost to their own madness, found redemption through rehabilitation. Livewire, Arnold Wesker, Dr. Freeze, and even Poison Ivy all walked a path of redemption, leaving behind their criminal pasts. Livewire's talk show remained a staple of entertainment, transcending terrestrial boundaries to become a galactic sensation. With the assistance of a certain someone, she continued her interviews, captivating audiences across the universe by hosting extraterrestrial guests. Her fame soared, making her one of the most renowned figures not just on Earth, but throughout the cosmos. Arnold Wesker, once the notorious Scarface puppeteer and mob boss, transformed the company entrusted to him by an enigmatic benefactor into a global powerhouse. Despite achieving immense success, he received the sobering news of ownership of the company. He understood the meaning behind this gesture as a final parting, and although saddened by the fact that he could never meet his benefactor again, he continued on, leading the company to new heights. Though saddened by the realization that he would never see his benefactor again, he forged ahead, steering the company toward greater heights. Dr. Freeze, now known by his civilian name Dr. Fries, gained widespread respect for his scientific achievements and the countless lives he saved. Despite his success, he chose to retire after a mere decade of service at Wesker's company. Using his savings, he opted to spend his remaining years with his beloved wife Nora, whose life he had managed to save with the help of a mysterious benefactor. However, their time together was tragically short-lived. Nora's prolonged preservation in cryostasis had taken a toll on her fragile body, and despite Dr. Fry's best efforts, she passed away just 5 years later. Devastated by her loss, Dr. Fries disappeared without a trace shortly after her funeral, leaving behind a void in the scientific community. A month later, an unknown intruder breached Wesker's company, absconding with the father box responsible for Nora's miraculous recovery. The identity of the thief remains a mystery, fueling rumors and urban legends of a deranged scientist seeking to defy death itself. Yet, the truth behind the theft remains elusive, shrouded in speculation and uncertainty. As for Harley Quinn, her journey was one of redemption and self-discovery. With the support of her former colleagues at Arkham Asylum and other allies, she overcame the traumas inflicted upon her by the Joker, finding solace and purpose in helping rehabilitate hundreds of villains alongside Bruce. After serving as the vice manager of the mental asylum in New York for many years, she retired to travel the world, embracing the freedom and joy that had long eluded her. And then there was the Penguin, who, through a deal struck with a mysterious figure, transitioned his operations into legality, eventually ascending to the position of mayor. For years, he ruled Gotham with an iron fist, though now, he rested peacefully, having passed away from natural causes, his legacy a mix of legality and infamy. Amidst the bustling streets of Gotham, Bruce Wayne found himself lost in contemplation, reminiscing about the countless lives he had touched and the transformations he had witnessed. Thoughts of the enigmatic figure who had catalyzed these changes lingered in his mind, a silent guardian guiding him on his path of redemption. Suddenly, a collective hush fell over the city as all advertisement screens abruptly went dark, capturing the attention of passers-by. Within moments, the screens flickered back to life, revealing a grand stage bathed in light. A voice, long absent from Bruce's ears, resonated across the city, full of mischief. Greetings, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Today's performance is brought to you by the god of evil and tyranny. As Darkseid made his appearance, clad in an unexpected emo wig and heavy makeup, Bruce couldn't help but smile at the absurd sight before him as a rat draped in royal clothes played the role of the maestro, directing the band behind Darkseid. The once formidable ruler of Apocalypse now stood on stage, belting out a rendition of Fall for You with surprising fervor. Chuckling to himself, Bruce resumed his leisurely stroll through the city streets, leaving behind the spectacle of Darkseid's unexpected performance. At that moment, amidst the chaos and unpredictability of Gotham, Bruce found a sense of wonder, knowing that even the most fearsome of foes could eventually succumb to such childish whims of someone more powerful. And with that, the story drew to a close, leaving behind a city teeming with untold tales and unexplored possibilities. At the end,